All right, welcome everyone. We're very excited to have you all joining us today. We're going to get started. So welcome to the Homebuyer Seminar, your ultimate guide to navigating home ownership. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Naomi Demsas. I am on the leadership team of the Eritrean Diaspora Network, and we are so excited to introduce all of our presenters, Selam, Lilly, Sarah, and Patrick, and I'll get to that and get to all of them in a second. But before we do that, for those of you who are new to the Eritrean Diaspora Network, EDIN is a community organization dedicated to the advancement of the Eritrean diaspora through nonpartisan community programming. One of the ways that we do that is through professional development. EDIN has a professional development network, and the primary objective of this program is to promote the spirit of networking and cooperation amongst Eritreans in the diaspora and help foster individual and collective success by providing opportunities to grow and learn and network, supporting the development of Eritreans in their given career fields. We are enhancing awareness of the professional accomplishments of Eritreans throughout the diaspora. We have hosted a series of workshops, including this one. We previously did workshops on getting into the tech field and estate planning, and we'll continue to do more. For this event, we are especially excited to partner with two amazing DMV realtors and longtime supporters of EDIN, Lilly Mal and Selam Eyassu. And we are excited that Sarah Anderson, who's a closing attorney at Pruitt Title, is joining us, along with Patrick Lai, who is a senior mortgage advisor with Union Home Mortgage. They will all be introducing themselves very shortly, but that's just a brief introduction. They are all awesome people and have taken time out of their day to do this for us. And I'm extremely grateful, and round of applause for you guys. So thank you. And then just before we get started, I want to say a couple things. Please keep in mind the mission and values of this organization and respect this space. There will be an opportunity to ask questions, but please add them to the comment box, the chat box, or use the Q&A feature. We'll do our best to track them. And if you want to ask your question live and in person, just raise your hands. If you take pictures or talk about how awesome this event is, please tag EDIN. We love good feedback. On Instagram, we are at eridiaspora. And be sure, it would be great if all of you, Selam, Lilly, Patrick, and Sarah, if you guys can put your Instagrams in the chat as well, or your LinkedIns. Everybody should share their LinkedIns in the chat so we can all connect and after this as well. We will be recording this session. We encourage you to have fun and ask some great questions. With that said, let's jump into our workshop. Salam, Lilly, take it away.
Naomi, thank you so much for having us. Hi, everyone. My name is Lilly. I am a real estate agent with Remax One Solutions. I am a licensed agent in DMV, DC, Virginia, Maryland. I'm also a commercial agent. So I am beyond excited to share some ways of being able to help you guys own your next dream home. All right, let's get started. All right, so today we're going to be discussing few benefits of home ownership, as well as the team who are going to be in a process helping you buy a home, the steps to home ownership, establishing house hunting, mortgage 101, mortgage solutions, understanding the process, application process, what to expect at closing, and from closing costs and post-closing info. All right, so benefits of home ownership. One of the biggest benefit of home ownership is the tax benefits. When you buy a property, one of the main reasons people buy homes is for taxes. When it comes down to taxes, you're able to deduct the interest that you pay in a mortgage. Compared to renting, which the option is not available, with mortgage, there is. The second benefit of home ownership is building equity and generational wealth. Building equity means that the property that you buy is able to build value in the long term. So let's say, for instance, you buy a property at $300,000. In the next 5-10 years, the property builds equity and now it's worth $400,000. At that point, it means you have equity of $100,000. The equity you're able to use for various reasons. You could buy a second property, you're able to pay debts off, you're able to own a business. So the huge benefit of buying a home is to be able to build equity. Another benefit is generational wealth. Whereas when you own a home, in the long term, again, the home is going to appreciate in value. So that's an amazing way to be able to continue to build your asset and grow in value. Last but not least is personalization. When it comes to renting a property, for the most part, you're not able to, change cabinets or decor the property the kind of way you want it. Whereas when you own your own property, you're able to do things that you could do when, that you can't do when it comes to renting, such as painting, remodeling, changing bathrooms, kitchens, flooring, and so forth. And this will also add value in the property. All right. There are various reasons why.
Sorry, Lily, can I just interrupt for a second since
Yes.
it's conversational and it's a
Yes.
learning experience for Naomi. Can you talk a little bit more about the tax benefits of buying a house?
Yes, absolutely. So when it comes down to buying a property, most people may not know, but you're able to deduct the interest that you pay in a mortgage. When it comes to a mortgage, and I know Patrick will go in detail about it, but you do have principal, interest, insurance, and taxes. So when you own a home, the taxes is deductible. Whereas when you're renting, there's really no benefit. And when it comes down to the rental payment, so that's the benefit of it.
Yeah. Now to dig a little bit deeper, Lily, basically on our end, we talk about that all the time with clients. So the tax benefit associated with, I believe it's 10,000. That's something that we should always check with a CPA because things can change every single year. Like for me, for example, I'm a W-2 wage earner. I work for a company. I'm not self-employed. So one of the benefits that I have, one of the real main benefits is being able to write off, the mortgage interest that you're paying. And as we know, a big chunk of the mortgage in the beginning, a lot of it's interest. So that becomes less tax dollars that you would have to pay towards the end of the year. A lot of it just derives from how much someone's federal income tax bracket is, because it is affected by that. So later on, I'll demonstrate a report that can show what the difference between renting versus owning is. And I slated it off of a 24% federal income tax bracket, which a lot of people are falling into these days. So we'll dig into that a little bit later as well. So we actually have some visuals that we can actually look at.
Can I share my own story about my taxes when
Please
I
do.
bought my first house? So I was, for instance, before I owned a home, I owed $5,000 in taxes that year. The following year, the full year that I owned the home, when I filed taxes, and I'm not, again, not a tax professional, just giving you my personal experience, I got $8,000 back. So to me, that was a huge benefit and difference. It's obviously going to depend on your income bracket, on your interest, if it makes sense to itemize your deductions. Talk to your tax preparer about that, but I was very happy with that. So while it looks like you're paying a lot of interest up front, a lot of it's deducted. So
Thank you.
So investment wise, when it comes down to real estate, not everybody buys a home as for primary reasons. Some clients would buy investment properties, and there's various types of investment properties. So the first one could be buy and hold, where individuals buy a property, there's a cash flow into it, they rent the property out, there's tax benefit to it, it's building equity, they sit on it and let it kind of just continue to grow. The second investment is flipping. This happens pretty often in the DMV area where individuals are buying properties that needs to be repaired. They'll fix the actual issue that the property has and sell it and make a good profit. When it comes down to flipping, you have to be careful to do your due diligence when making sure, knowing the comps in the neighborhood, what kind of developments is coming up, as well as, what kind of work the property needs. And it's always smart to buy a property that's in a very, easy to sell, great pricing makes a very important, reasoning for it. And then you're able to sell it and make a good equity into it. House hacking. This one I'm seeing more now, especially with the interest rate being so high. a lot of individuals are buying properties where they're able to rent a portion of it. So for instance, a lot of my clients would ask for a townhome that has a full basement with a full bedroom, bathroom, like a small kitchen area, where they're able to rent that out and use some of that income as a way to help with the mortgage payment. This is really important because I know a lot of clients are stuck on rates being so high right now. That's all you hear in the news, you know, rate 7%, rate 7.25%. But we have to remember that, you know, you're able to refinance the interest rate. You're not married to the interest rate. So by doing some, you know, by being able to think outside the box and finding a way that you're able to maybe Airbnb some part of the property or rent the property, could allow you into a house and be able to refinance when need be. So house hacking has been very, very popular. So the steps to home ownership. When clients, you know, text me asking about what is the first step to owning a home, the first thing that we do is we connect our clients with a loan officer. The loan officer will ask you things such as credit score, debt to income ratio, income, and be able to kind of provide you a pre-approval. The pre-approval will let us know exactly how much home you're able to afford. Once the pre-approval is completed, then I'm able to sit with you, kind of figure out what you're looking for in the property, locations, type of home, is it a townhome, single family home, condominium. Once I have a sense of what you're looking at and I have the approval amount, then I'm able to set you up on MLS to be able to send you various listings. From the listings, we're able to do.
Sorry, Lily, sorry. What is MLS? I don't know if you said that before.
Oh,
but
yes. So MLS is very similar to, it's a system that we have for real estate agents that's able to show us properties that are, you know, listed to be sold.
Okay.
So most of the MLS listings, you can also find in Redfin and Zillow, but we're able to kind of set it up with your own requirements. Once you have various listings coming to you, you're able to let us know which homes you like, and we could schedule a showing. Once you find the right home, then we will make an offer. When making an offer, and this is a big part where you need an agent, when making an offer, you know, I do my due diligence in figuring out what the comps are in the area, what's happening in that location, what kind of development's happening. And based on that, I will give you a recommendation of what kind of offer we should submit. And when making an offer, to be able to protect you, I put various of contingencies. And the reason why we put contingency is because when submitting an offer, you would have to submit an earnest money deposit, which we call EMD. The earnest money deposit is an amount that you put down, the title company holds, which is usually about 1% of the sale price. That shows the sellers how serious you are in buying this property. If at some point you try to walk away from the deal, the seller could have the right to that earnest money deposit. So ways that I protect you from losing that money is by adding contingencies. So we would add, for instance, a home inspection contingency. We would have a home inspector coming in. The home inspector will inspect the property, plumbing, electrical, roofing, HVAC, from A to Z, appliance and everything. Once the home inspection is completed, if you are happy with the result, then we proceed. If you're not happy with the result, we'll go back to the seller and ask and negotiate for them to fix the items that are in the findings. If they say no, you have the right to walk away and not lose your EMD. Oh, they come back and say, we'll fix some items, but not everything. But so there's a room to negotiate in that process. The second contingency is appraisal. Appraisal, Patrick, the lender company, will have a appraisal company to come in and make sure the property is valued at that correct amount. So the offer we submit and the appraisal amount should match. If the appraisal is less than what we're submitting, then it gives us the right to ask the sellers to reduce the sale price. If for whatever reason the seller do not want to reduce the sale price, at that point you also have a right to walk away and not lose your EMD. Last but not least is the financing contingency. With financing contingency, Patrick would do his due diligence in making sure you're able to get qualified and close. However, once your file is submitted to underwriting, if for whatever reason the loan doesn't go through, That's what could protect you, the financing contingency. The biggest thing with the contingency is we have deadlines. So for instance, home inspection has to be done within 7 days or 10 days. And it's my job to make sure we meet those deadlines. So anyhow, once the offer is accepted and we agree on the terms, at that point, you go to closing and the lender will take over and making sure that the loan's good to go, underwriting is approving things. Sarah and her company will make sure the title is cleared. Then you go to closing.
I'm assuming Sarah's going to talk about why it's important to have your title be clear, right? At some point.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Lilly, I do have a follow-up question because, since we're in the market, we're also seeing instances where it's not the norm, where we can, typically if it's a buyer's market, we can maybe ask for an inspection on contracts and have the financing contingency and the appraisal contingency. So from what you're seeing on the market right now, because it's been a seller's market for multiple years, and from what we're seeing is likely going to continue to be that way, potentially for the next 3 to 10 years. What are you seeing on the market as far as are people waiving these contingencies, and what are those reasons for that, so that buyers are aware?
Thank you for bringing that up. That's a good point. So when we look at properties, and let's say you find a home that you love, you want this property, however, this property has multiple offers. In this situation, we have to kind of do things a little differently. So one thing that I would do is, instead of completely waiving, inspection, because I feel like inspection is such an important part of the process, we could do a pre-inspection. So pre-inspection means that before we even submit the offer, we get an inspector to come in, check the property, do a walkthrough with us, make sure, the structure, foundation, all of that's okay. And then when submitting an offer, we could waive that inspection. That makes our offer a lot more stronger than somebody else who is submitting an offer with inspection contingency. And this is only if there's multiple offers. Another thing that I do to become very competitive is I would do an appraisal gap. So instead of completely waiving the appraisal, we do a gap stating, for instance, let me give you an example. You submit we submit an offer for $400,000. However, appraisal comes in and the property is appraised at $390,000. So it's $10,000 difference. So appraisal gap, we could say if it's a $5,000 difference, we could pay that difference out of pocket. So that tends to kind of help as well. So completely waiving appraisal, I don't recommend, but being able to do appraisal gap is a way for us to become in a stronger position. And then also with home inspection, a second thing we could do is, if you don't want to do a pre-inspection and lose the actual fee that you pay for inspection, you could do inspection for information purposes. That means that when we do home inspection, instead of going back and forth negotiating with sellers, which most sellers do not like, you could do for information purposes, which states that you have the right to walk away if you're not happy with the inspection, or continue to proceed with the process. So these things kind of help out with making sure the loan, your offer gets accepted.
Okay, so for home buyers and potential home buyers, it's very important to understand when you are submitting an offer after getting pre-approved. A lot of this really depends on what the supply and demand levels are. So if I was a seller and I have 20 people lined up at my door to try to purchase my home, as a seller, I'm going to be more picky and choosier on picking the contract that's going to be safest for me to settle. Because guess what? As a home seller, if I need to move somewhere else, but it's contingent for me to sell my home in order to afford to purchase the other home, the biggest fear for sellers not to have anything go wrong. So it's very important to have industry experts on your side to know exactly how that market analysis is. Lilly and Selam are experts at that, while Sarah is handling title. Now on the lending aspect, the quality of work and detail on that's also going to be pretty crucial as well, which we'll cover on later in the slides. But thanks so much, Lilly. So from the market, from what you've been seeing so far, on an average, what's been happening? Do you think, some people are waiving some of these contingencies within the current market? Or are you seeing half and half? How's that state of the current market doing?
Location matters a lot. So based on the past couple of years was insane, right? So unless you're waiving all contingencies, it was very difficult to be able to buy property. Now with the rates being as high as they are, it's making things a lot more easier from an agent perspective, from my perspective. There's a lot more, and it's of course not for there's locations where they're flying off the market because the inventory is very low. However, comparing to the past couple of years, it's becoming a lot more easier to get offers accepted. And just FYI, most people know that 2020, 2021 rates were what, 2%, 3%? And so a lot of those individuals who refinance are not selling those properties. So there's not much of a supply, you know, so it's really, really important to be able to get the financing right, work with a lender who knows what he's doing, have a commitment letter instead of a pre-approval. And I know Patrick will discuss this in detail, but these things definitely help in being able to win an offer.
You want to move to the next slide, or did we cover number 4?
Do we have any questions before we proceed?
No, I think everybody's taking it in at the moment. Oh, wait, Dougie has a question. God bless you, Dougie. Are there ways to better an offer from a tax perspective, maybe picking up transfer taxes?
I would definitely say you should speak to a tax accountant when it comes down to that. Patrick, would you have anything to say about that?
As far as paying for the seller's taxes to pay the home, is that what we're referring to?
Yeah, are they referring to the recordation transfer taxes or other taxes?
Dougie, what are you referring to? He will let us know. Yes, that is what he's referring to.
To the record. Let's see.
So in other words, submitting an offer, let's just say instead of the seller paying the standard transfer taxes, the buyer agrees to pay the seller's transfer taxes instead. I've seen it happen sometimes, but most of the time rare. It's not very common most of the time from what we see.
I see a lot of contracts. Usually it's in DC and Maryland, that 50-50 split. And I'll talk about this later, but there are certain benefits for first-time Maryland home buyers and first-time DC home buyers who are occupying the property to basically waive some of those fees for the buyer. But certainly you could, I guess, I don't know, usually it's 50-50, but they could, I guess, to strengthen their offer, try to negotiate some of that in. I would just make it very clear. And Lilly and Selam will totally walk you through that process and help you get the best offer in front of that seller that makes sense, especially if they have a concern with it.
And just
you could also do a credit. That's another thing.
And just to add to make an offer more attractive is escalation. Selam and I do a lot of escalations when we have multiple offers. And that means the way escalation works is we're able to escalate to your comfort level, right? So for instance, properties $500,000, and you submit that sell price of $500,000, but you feel that you're able to go up to $550,000, for instance, right? That's $50K more. Instead of just flat out giving them $550,000, we're able to escalate by $1,000 or by $2,000 up to that amount that you feel comfortable with. So if another offer comes in at, let's say, $502,000, yours goes to $503,000 up to your actual sell price. So that's another way to be able to become very attractive in multiple offers.
Thank you. Just one question. Oh, go ahead, Selam. Sorry.
I was going to say, especially with the current market, you see a lot of houses selling for more than the ask price. So a lot of the times that is what's happening with buyers competing by escalating and offering more on the table.
Thank you. Sarah, I think this question is for you.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah.
So
I'm just going to read it really quick so that everybody else can hear it. When you received $8,000 back, did that mean that the government owed you $3,000?
No, because when I owed $5,000, it was for the prior year before I owned a property for the full year. So I wasn't able to itemize my deductions at that time. It didn't make sense for me personally. So the next year, after I had a full year of payments on my mortgage, it made sense to itemize my deductions. And so while I did pay the government back the $5,000 for the prior year, this next year I didn't owe money. I got money back, which was like a huge thing for me.
That's awesome.
And again, it's different for every person, so talk to your tax preparer, but that was very eye-opening for me personally, being able to get back a benefit from making those payments and owning my home.
Thank you, Sarah. Nititi also has a question. She's on the leadership team of Eden. What are your thoughts on assumable mortgages? Does this strategy work? Have your clients had any luck getting a seller to transfer their mortgage so that they can assume a lower interest rate?
Patrick, I think this is a you and me thing. I've done 3 in the last month. So I have way too much experience, but talk about it from the lender side maybe first, and then I'll chime in.
So usually it's VA loans that we're seeing that are going to be assumable loans because veterans are able to do that. And conventional loans, you can't. There's no transferability on that part. And what that allows someone to do is they can purchase the home, right? And they can assume the portion of the mortgage that's owed. However, on the other end, whatever the difference of that loan amount is compared to the sales price, what buyers are doing is they're bridging that difference in cash. So you may find some of those out there where you might be able to do that to assume loans, but primarily they're going to be veterans that actually own the mortgage. So far this year, I've seen 2, but Sarah would probably see more because she's on the end of closing the actual transaction, where if a buyer is looking to assume a VA mortgage, I actually don't see it because I only handle new originations, new mortgages. And when a buyer is assuming a mortgage that a seller already has, it's already being serviced at that point by the servicing company. So what ends up happening is the servicing company ends up handling that process. Unfortunately, I hear it's pretty lengthy. I hear the process can go from 60 days on a fast end. I've seen one where my buyer was the one selling their house to someone, and someone was assuming that mortgage, and literally the servicer took 4 months to process the whole thing.
I can talk about this like literally all day long, so maybe that's for another conversation. But something that I found very interesting, and I didn't know this until assumable mortgages started being a thing. So we all know a few years ago, there was something crazy in the market. The rates dropped ridiculously low, especially for VA loans. And that's not happening now. Like the rates obviously went back to the normal rate. And now we have all these people with VA loans with very low rates. And so a lot of them are really marketing the property when they sell it as an assumable mortgage. What I always thought was that you had to be VA to apply and assume this. I've been told recently, I had one case where they were not VA. However, there were a lot of fees that they bore as part of that. There are a lot of fees that a seller would normally pay, the buyer ends up paying. And then also it is a lengthier process. And like Patrick mentioned, so in this case, it was a $1.3 million property. They had like a $400,000 mortgage. Yeah, the buyer got that $300 mortgage at the low rate. They were able to assume that. However, because they weren't VA, the seller lost that VA benefit. Like they can't go and buy another property using that same benefit if the buyer is not VA. And then the other thing is the buyer, I guess they had rich relatives, I don't know, but they were able to bring the difference to the table in cash, which I can't personally afford to bring that to the table in cash. So that's the other thing you're looking at. Just bridging that gap and bringing money to the table, because you're only going to get the benefit for what's left owed on the seller's prior mortgage. So in my case, we're able to close in like 2 months, but again, it could be a lengthier process. There's a lot more underwriting required on the loan side, I believe, Patrick, I don't know. But Yeah, it's a process. It is, and if you get, if you're purchasing a property, you have a great rate, you're able to refinance at a great rate and you're VA qualified, it could help you when you go to sell it. But generally, we haven't seen these until recently, so they're rare. Be prepared to bring cash to the table, pay more in closing costs, but then it is a great option. You get a great rate for whatever the seller owed left on that mortgage. So
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
All right.
Any-
Next,
More questions up to this point?
No other questions. That was it. Thank you, Sarah. I think somebody had a follow-up question about whether it would only, you have to be a VA, and then you just answered it. So thank you.
Awesome.
right.
So now on to the fun stuff, showing properties and looking at what is out there. Before we start going to showings, we always want to sit down with our buyers and create a search based on their criteria. And we do this on the MLS database, the multiple listing services to uncover properties. So we gather information based on your budget, style of home, basic amenities, location. The first thing you want to do is create a budget. And the first step to that is getting a pre-qualification with your mortgage advisor. So Patrick will run your credit, look at your income and different key factors before he gives you a number to show you how much house you can afford. So if you don't have that number, it's going to be really hard for us to even try to figure out which location to look into. But also, let's say you're pre-approved for $700,000. It doesn't mean that you have to go hunting for a $700,000 house. What you want to do is sit back and calculate the budget that fits your household based on your gross income, your expenses, and also what is your mortgage going to entail and what that number will be. So once we have honed down on the number, then this will determine what location we can even start to explore. So state, city, county, zip code, all of that will be determined by your budget. And then within your location, we encourage you to consider what is important to you. Is public transportation important? What kind of convenience are you looking for? Bus, metro, bike trails, etc. Also, what is your commute like? A lot of folks are working from home. So what do you want the community to look like? Or are you okay with driving an hour in traffic? Or do you want to be in a city where you're close to your, where your commute is easy? So once we have determined the location, we also want to dig deep into the style of home that you want. And it's okay if you have, you're not 100% sure whether you want a single family or a condo, townhome. Is it a turnkey, or do you mind doing some work? Most of the time in my experience, we always start off with maybe a visual that we've had in mind. But once you start to go out and actually see these properties, then you will start to form an idea of what actually truly matters to you and the key features that you're looking for. So a lot of times, even with the states being in the DMV, maybe our customers are looking in DC initially. And then we encourage our customers to always kind of think outside the box and be a little bit flexible, because your property could be in Virginia or Maryland. And also we could start off with a condominium. And as in condominiums, you have to figure out if the condo fees are going to work within your budget. If it's a townhome, is that HOA fee going to be something that you can work out with? So all of these different features can come with pros and cons, but it's very subjective. You really just want to do what fits best with your budget and within your household.
Not
Also,
meaning to interject, but I wanted to put a plug out for Lilly and Selam and Patrick. Like, having a team that knows the whole DMV is huge. There's so many realtors who only do one specific jurisdiction, like Northern Virginia, but they don't know Maryland and DC. They're all so different. The laws are different. everything's different. And so, and they're licensed in all three. It's a huge benefit if you aren't sure which area you want to live in, to have a team that can navigate all of those areas. So I think that's one of the many things that Lilly, Patrick, Selam, and I do all three as well, that we all stand out in, and we could help you find what's right for you. Sorry to interrupt.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Sarah, because almost 80% of the time, we start off with one specific type of home that our buyers are looking for. But the more you start to look, at properties, and the more you start to get to know that community, your opinions are going to change. You're going to revise what your preferences are. So yes, it does help to have access to properties in the DMV in all three jurisdictions, because they can be drastically different. And to have a team to support you and trying to figure out, which area to look into and to guide you is definitely key. So also basic amenities will also determine what type of locations and communities we'll be looking into. And the next slide. Thank you, Ariel. Next slide is what other considerations should you make? Accessibility and amenities are very important to a lot of people that we really don't think about often, but this is also a criteria that we can use to filter the listings that we're going to provide you with to look at. So ramps, grab bars, walk-in showers and tubs, lower counters, open concept floor layout. These are really not some things that you see all the time, but that's why you have us and our resources to really dig deep and see what is out there that meets your criteria. And also other things you want to consider is the community amenities, playground, swimming pool, fitness center, outdoor activities, dog park, landscaping, also with convenience to shopping and stores for all of your essentials. Are those things, important to you? Does everything have to fit your criteria, or can you be flexible? So these are the type of things that we want to discuss ahead of time before we go out and start looking for properties. But again, we're here to guide you and find you your perfect home. So if anything changes in the middle of us searching for your properties, that's fine. We can work with you. We are flexible. We just want you to be happy with what you're looking for and what you find out there.
Selam, can I interject with a question? I think Lilly talked about this earlier about living in a condo and the condominium fees, but somebody had a question. Under what conditions do you live in a condominium? What should you watch out for?
So I live in a condo. I think it really is subjective. The reason I wanted to buy a condo is because maintenance for me was key. I didn't want to deal with, the type of maintenance that it takes to live in a townhome or a single family. The downside to that is condo fees keep going up every year. So you really have to figure out what you are okay with, because they can get really pricey. Also, as a first-time home buyer, I think I really didn't have a good idea of, what it would even be like to live in a townhome or a single-family home, and the location I was undecided upon. But it is a great starter home for me as a condo, because you're not your maintenance cost is not going to be as high, so you can you get the experience of becoming a homeowner, and you can always either rent your condo or sell it to move up. But I think one of the main keys is to consider the condo fees when we're looking for homes, because you could probably get, if you're okay with living with a townhome, you could probably get more house for pretty much the same monthly payment or mortgage. So it's really subjective, but the community, what amenities are included in the condo fee, what are you really paying for? I think those are the type of things that we would want to consider when looking into condos. The main
And-
thing for me is maintenance. I don't have to lawn my lawn. I don't have to worry about maintaining the exterior, renovations within, the building. I don't have to worry about any of that. So for me, that was what motivated me to move into a condo.
And just to add to that, and at Selam, I know you've seen a lot of this too. You could see a townhome that's a condo townhouse. The difference between a condo townhouse and a regular fee simple townhome is that with condo townhomes, you don't own the outside. So if you want to add fence, if you want to do anything outside your property, you're not able to. It's part of the commonplace, not part of your home. So you only own in the inside. Another thing I see with condominium compared to a fee simple property is the fact that even when you do any kind of changes inside your property, like if you want to add a bathroom or you want to add, different things, the plumbing is kind of connected throughout all the condos. So
And
most
sprinklers.
of the time, right. So most of the time they don't approve it. So just, a few things about that.
I own a house, condo, different situation. So with condos, like Lily was saying, you literally by law own the walls in. So the drywall in is what you own in condo ownership. And yes, you do have to go through the board to get approval to make renovations within your unit, usually because of the sprinkler systems and plumbing that run between the units. But again, I don't want 2 homes. It's a lot of maintenance. So it's nice having a condo where, yes, you pay condo fees, but you have common amenities. You don't have to worry about the roof. They have funds for that, or, it's shared. Those costs are shared amongst many owners, which is great. So there are definitely benefits to owning a condo. I would not want to own more than one house. That'd be too much work for me. But yeah, so I just renovated the unit I'm in right now, and I had to go through the board, but it was super simple, easy, straightforward, had a contractor do it. I love the condo life here, but it's also nice to have some backyard. So it just depends. Low maintenance though, it's great. And your condo dues should be going up regularly because that provides for inflation and prevents like assessment issues. So I mean, condo dues tend to increase over time, but that is good. And it's in the best interest of the owners that happens.
Thank you.
Absolutely. In terms of building equity, I think over the long term, condos do not appreciate as much as townhomes. So that's one thing that you want to keep in mind. It is not guaranteed with any property that your equity will increase tremendously, but the chances of townhomes or single family homes appreciating significantly are, that you have more chances in that area versus a condo. But then again, at the end of the day, what truly matters to you, that's either way, it's okay. You have a roof over your head that you truly enjoy. And again, when you buy properties, you're not married to them for life. You can always turn them into a rental. You can turn around and sell them and upgrade to another property that suits your needs best at the time. So you're not stuck with the property that you're buying off the bat.
And Selam, just one additional question. When you say condo, is it one house inside of an apartment?
Right. So it looks like just a regular apartment for the most part, high-rise buildings, garden style condos. But you are really just your property is within those 4 walls. So everything else you share with your neighbors. But that is what a condo is. It's not the townhouse that you see, nor is it the single family house there. You're in a building and you're sharing common areas with your neighbors.
But you could also see townhomes that are condos. So in top of most condos are those condos that I'm talking about. But nowadays we're seeing a lot more townhouses. So you wouldn't even know unless you go to a tax record, if it's condo association or if it's, fee simple. And I think it's happening more in the DMV because there's not really much land. So a lot of
Right.
developers are building condo townhouses.
And the good news, you have that 3-day to 5-day review period. So after you're under contract, you'd receive what's called the resale package that outlines all the restrictions, the governing documents, everything to do with that condo or townhome or PUD, the planned unit development, so HOA. And you have a chance to review them. And if it's not what you expected insofar as the ownership, then you have like a right to void within a certain period of time. So that's a good news.
Thank you. I'm gonna let you continue, Selam. There's another question, but we'll save that for when Sarah is presenting.
Yeah, actually, yes, I think Sarah will cover capital gain taxes as well. So what is the benefit of working with a real estate agent? I mean, I do come across sometimes individuals, well, I can do this on my own, or especially on the seller side. But one thing that a lot of folks don't consider is the involvement of a lot of legal documents, disclosures and reports. And those documents could be different based on the market. So the documents that we use in transactions in Virginia are completely different from the ones that we use in Maryland and then DC as well. So as your agents, we are trained, and it is our duty to know what to put together during negotiations or to submit offers and things like that. And this will avoid you unnecessary mistakes that could be really costly, where it could cause you to lose your earnest money deposit. So to me, it's a no-brainer, because we do see a lot of things that come up in the behind closed doors that honestly, unless you are in the industry and you're a professional, I mean, it could turn into a real nightmare. The other thing is we pay membership fees to have access to the multiple listing service, the MLS. A lot of people rely on Zillow, Realtor.com, or Redfin, but we truly have real up-to-date information on all properties. This is also a database that we use to input your criteria and put together a list of properties that are on the market, but properties that are also soon to come to hit the market. We also are able to access a lot of information that may not be publicly available. That could help us, when it comes to negotiating and finding you the properties. We just have that information at our finger points. Also, MLS is where we, as real estate agents, list properties, and you can't really do that on Zillow or Redfin. So it's just a world of information that we can give you and provide you just by using this database. We also have a very vast network of professionals within the industry. We're always interacting and building relationship with other agents, lenders, title companies, inspectors, and you name it. And sometimes you just never know who you are dealing with on the other side. It could be someone you've worked with in the past. And it's happened time and time again where these types of relationships could really help you in winning an offer and give us advantages in negotiating. So we'll, as Lilly touched upon, some of the strategies that we use to negotiate on winning the offers, like waiving contingencies such as inspection, appraisal, and things like that. Every property is case by case. That's going back to building a relationship with other realtors. It really matters on, because there's certain things that, a listing agent is not obligated to provide you with, as far as the status of a listing or how many offers they have, and are they receiving offers above asking price. But there is a way to build a relationship with those other agents so that they can give you or get you to as close as possible to putting in a winning offer. So that help us really negotiate and help us get to the closing table. And also real estate agents, we are members of the National Association of Realtors. We have to adhere to certain codes of ethics. Otherwise, there's lawsuits that we might have to face. So we're definitely we are obligated to provide you with an honest and ethical treatment and provide fair transactions. So that is why you want to work with a real estate agent, whether you're on the buyer side, especially on the listing side, if you have a property that you want to put up on the market.
Thank you, Selam. Somebody asked, Simon asked, how much do you pay a real estate agent, or what's the percentage? What percentage do you pay?
So on the buyer side, we don't get paid from our buyer clients. That commission comes from the listing agent. The sellers agree on a percentage with the listing agent, and typically that's anywhere between 5 to 6%. And the listing agent then decides how much of that commission or percentage they want to split with the buyer. So on the buyer side, you're not paying out of pocket for the transaction.
Got it. And then somebody, what about on the seller side though?
Well, on the seller side, yes. So again, it would be anywhere between 5 to 6% of the listing price, but that's also negotiable. But on the buyer side, I do come across a lot of folks that are under they think that they're going to have to shell out funds to pay their real estate agent, but no. So it's always the agent that's representing the seller is going to split their commission with the buyer's agent. And that commission comes from their fee that they're charging their seller. So typically it's anywhere between 5 to 6%. Within lately, we're seeing it, I think at around 5%. But again, every transaction is different, and that's based on what they agree upon. That's between the agent, the listing agent, and the seller.
All right. Somebody asked, when co-signing a house, how is it best to go about it? Do both parties need a certain credit score? What's the best overall plan?
That'll be more of a question for me, right? On my end.
Sorry.
Yeah,
We'll wait for Patrick
to
answer that question. Go
No
ahead.
worries, no worries. So just to touch on that really quick. So for co-borrowers, it is taken into consideration what the qualifying credit score is as well, because they're basically co-signing on behalf of the borrower.
Mhm.
In the event if there's a default, I mean, both people are just, as much responsible for it. So both scores will be utilized. Typically, lenders are utilizing the lower of the two middle credit score is how that works. So usually when you do have a co-signer, a perfect candidate for it is someone who doesn't have a lot of debt, someone that has excellent credit. And that's the reason why that's going to strengthen up the borrower's profile as a combination versus dragging a primary borrower down. You don't want to have a co-signer that's going to harm the transaction. You want someone that's going to be able to help it out.
Thank you. We have a couple tax questions, but I'm going to hold those for when Sarah's talking about taxes.
Any other questions before we move to the next slide? All right, I think we're good. Oh, it's my part, Mortgage 101. Hello, everybody. So just to properly introduce myself, my name is Patrick Lee. I am a mortgage advisor, almost going on 20 years now. Can't believe it's been that fast. I found a passion in this back in 2004. Prior to me being in the business, I was a health and fitness coach and managed health clubs for 5 years. And ever since I got into mortgages, I never looked back. So I became, a first-time homeowner myself. And my parents, when they first came to the US, one of the biggest things that really helped them build some wealth, to better things financially for the family, is really purchasing their very first property. So it's amazing what having the ability of home ownership can actually do. So on my end, I work for a company called Union Home Mortgage. They've been around for 75 years. We're actually licensed in 48 different states. Personally, myself, I cover 9, but I primarily focus in the DMV area. Our model is very simple. When we come across helping people, I have a team of 2 assistants that help me out, as well as loan officers that work with me. But my most favorite part of this is really handling the consultation side, guiding my clients through every step of the process, holding your hand through everything. And we're 100% by recommendation only. So my clients from 20 years ago, we're still in touch today and helping their friends and family members. So talking about the realtor side, since that was the last slide, as a home buyer, it behooves you to use a real estate agent because they know the regulations, they know how to execute a contract. Their goal is to protect you. Just to put out a story there, I had a customer that actually bought a home with me before. I handled the financing, they appreciated everything. And then they decided to think, hey, I can go and do this on my own. And when I talked to them about it briefly, I was like, listen, I don't think it's a good idea because you really don't understand the real estate side that well, even though you've purchased properties in the past. So this individual decides to go on and do it on their own. In short, right, because he didn't have the right representation, he was representing himself. In the end, we did close a transaction on the lending side because I was only handling the lending part. But he costed himself an extra $50,000-$60,000 on the transaction because of doing some things incorrectly that even I saw as a loan officer. But by the time I got the contract in, it was simply too late at that point. So because majority of the time the seller is the one that's paying for the commissions, it behooves you as a buyer to make sure that you have good representation on someone who's going to be reputable, they understand the market, and actually have that knowledge. So even though I'm not a realtor, you know, the best thing to do is make sure that you have that representation. So I hope I don't bore anyone with the Mortgage 101 question. You know, any questions, I love to make this interactive. This is my most favorite part of everything. And what I'm going to do is dig into, you know, what it typically takes to get financing. Now, for those who have the ability and have enough cash to buy a house paid in full in cash, you're not going to need any of this at all. So this is only when you need money to purchase a home. So when it comes to lenders getting customers pre-approved or pre-qualified, primarily there's 3 major things that lenders are looking at. The first part I'm going to talk about is credit. Credit's going to be one of the most important factors because if you are asking me to say, hey, can I borrow $500,000 from you, right? We're going to want to be able to see that, hey, are you trustworthy in being able to pay the mortgage back on a timely fashion? The biggest fear for a lender is to not have defaults when it comes to mortgage. It causes a lot of heartburn. So the first initial step when it comes to preparing, if you haven't purchased before, is to review your credit, know your credit score, you know, prior to starting the home buying process. Credit scores generally can be anywhere between 350 to 850. 850 is considered as excellent. Frankly, I rarely ever see anyone with a 350, 450. You know, typically if that's the case, that means 0 bills are being paid on time from the get-go. So it's important to review your credit. The bare minimum requirements from what I've seen, you know, across board and lending institutions, you can get pre-qualified as low as having a 580 qualifying credit score. Now, if you're going through, you know, a planning process, the earlier that you check it out in the beginning, the better it is. My advice for my clients, you know, at all times, whenever they're looking to get prepared, is do it as early as possible. If you have a goal of wanting to buy a house, you want to know what's happening now. What if it's something where it's going to take you a full year to get prepared for? The earlier you know, the better it is that you're able to prepare. Disputing errors on your credit report. So if you take a look at your credit report, sometimes these can have erroneous, you know, information, or there could have been some fraud that was committed that unfortunately happened to, you know, whoever the buyer is. So this is a great opportunity up front. If you're noticing, hey, there's some discrepancies here, there are ways to reach out to credit agencies. And there's also credit repair agencies as well, where you can then try to improve your credit overall, since that's one of the most important things to prepare. Now, aside from preparing your credit, since credit scores are pretty important, it's also important for you to reduce your amount of expenses as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you do have expenses, that you can't qualify for a mortgage. A lot of it really derives from how much income you're currently pulling in based on guidelines and how much we can count in. And there's a general percentage of what lenders want to keep that to. The reason why is because you don't want to be overstretched within your budget. As much as we want people to budget accordingly, not everyone does that. And some people just need education on how to go about doing that. So for example, we don't want to give you a $3,000 a month mortgage payment if you're making $2,800 a month, right? That's just going to set you up for failure. So there's going to be certain ways as we go through a pre-approval process that we help you identify what your budget's going to be. And what you want to do in the very beginning, most importantly, until you know for sure if it's something, if there's any purchases that you can make on things that you really need. Car loans, for example, people need to drive, they got to go to work. But what you don't want to do, is overextenuate yourself. So for example, having one car loan, for $600, $700 a month, that's equivalent for you reducing your home buying purchase power by almost $100,000 in purchase power. So be very, very careful with large debt that you have a monthly payment obligation on a regular monthly basis, because all these type of things will affect your debt load, right? So for example, if your bills are $500 per month, right, but you make $1,000 a month, that means 50% of your gross income is already a debt load. So if for a mortgage to qualify, if you need to be under 45 or under 43%, that person, that individual that has their bills already at 50%, there's really no room for a mortgage at that point. Because if there is, it's gonna set people up for failure.
Patrick,
So,
can I just ask really
Sure.
quick? What about student loan debt?
So student loan debt does come into play as well, especially eventually, there's going to be payments that are going to hit. So depending on different loan products, there's different ways for us to calculate the obligation. Usually it could stem anywhere between 0.5% to a full percent on what the balance is for student loans. There are things that lenders are doing on our side to kind of try to fight that, make it a little bit easier for people to purchase homes, especially when they have student loans. There's also times when we're able to count in no payment, depending if it's an income-based repayment. So there's different sets of guidelines for that, depending on the type of product that we actually do. So as we help our clients take a look at what the overall scenario is, our goal is to pinpoint, okay, let's see what kind of mortgage is going to be best suitable for it based on that client situation, because everyone's situation is a little bit different. Does that answer that question for you?
That does. Thank you.
Perfect. So avoid opening new and closing old lines of credit. So when you have old established credit, let's just say you had a credit card that's over 10 years old, that old credit trade line is going to be much more impactful of how it's going to affect your credit. So sometimes when people don't understand, they may close that particular credit line out, but then start like a smaller new credit card. However, that can actually affect your score by doing so. So a big way of how credit scores are actually graded, especially when it comes to revolving debt, is how much you owe on that revolving line of credit according to the credit limit. I mean, typically you want to keep things under 10%, no more than 30% of your credit limits, and definitely stay under 50%. So in other words, if you got $1,000 credit limit on a credit card, you want to keep that balance at bare minimum under half of that credit line. If you can keep it under 30% or 10%, that's even better. That's going to showcase and give you higher scores. Now, the way people establish credit is when you have at least 2 to 3 trade lines usually, and a trade line means an account that naturally reports on a credit report. So every time you have something that you're paying for on a monthly basis that has a consistent balance, meaning that it's not paid in full up front, over time, that's going to help you establish credit over the next 12 to 24 months. Even though we're not a credit agency, we have to review credit all the time when it comes to mortgages. So we're pretty familiar with all of that. So a lot of times when clients are getting pre-approved, if I notice something where I think, hey, I think this is going to be able to help them improve by far, we can always go over that advice and prepare advance ahead of time on what to do.
One question, Patrick.
Sure.
Is there any impact to your credit score if you add an authorized user with a lower score?
If you add an authorized user that has a lower score, So not for the main person that's holding that account. Because let's just say I have a credit card and I'm paying for everything on time. That's what affects my credit. When I give my card to an authorized user, for example, like my son, it's really just so that he is authorized to use my card and he has a card that's under his name. It will report on his credit. So if I pay that bill on time, that's actually going to help his credit out more than anything.
Got it.
But it doesn't benefit me per se to have that authorized user or harm me. So it's still being paid on my own.
Thank you.
Yep.
One thing I appreciated about my parents is I was very blessed and lucky that they set me up on their line of credit with a credit card when I was a younger age to help build my credit. And that really helped me out. So if you're looking at building generational wealth and helping out your kids for the future, depending on how much you trust them, it might be worth looking into.
And that's good that you brought that up. That was what I was going to say next, Sarah, is having an authorized user can also help them establish their credit as well, because it's going to showcase that the bill is being paid on time. Now, on the lending side, the cool part about that is we are allowed to exclude an authorized user account. But if it's going to benefit that person for us to use the authorized user account, then we'll go ahead and take that route instead. But we always have the option of both. So a part of also, budgeting for, for your next home purchase is taking a look at lowering your monthly payments. Don't do anything that's unnecessary. If you have a vehicle that works fine and you're looking to save money to purchase for a home, don't go out and buy, a brand new Tesla if you don't need it, because that payment's going to drastically affect things. What's more important to you, a car that you're going to drive part-time? Or is it a roof over your head, right? You got to set where your priorities are going to be. So as you take a look at budgeting, evaluate your monthly bills. Consider things like saving on electric, lowering your temperature, not wasting water, cut your utility bills on things that you don't need. Unfortunately, in America, a lot of people really don't budget. It's very important to budget, because if you don't take a look at what your monthly expenditures are on a monthly basis, you really don't know what's going out. So what's important for you to take a look at, hey, what am I taking home per month? And what bills are actually going out? And what can I have control over to reduce? So as you prepare these type of things, these are some of the things that you always want to think about and take note of. Now, lowering your monthly payments and your obligations and getting rid of your debt can also be pretty impactful as well. Every $10,000 that you're putting down on a mortgage is likely, currently based on rates, it's going to affect your payment by 60, 65 bucks per month. So if you have consistent bills, for example, let's just say you got a credit card that's at 60, $65 per month as a minimum. That credit card is holding you back by about 10,000 in buying power. So let's just say you transfer that to like a $650 obligation on a car loan. That's going to be equivalent to you reducing your buying power by about $100,000. So when it comes to budgeting, you want to reduce debt during the times when you can, but also talk to a professional first, because sometimes if you have enough cash where that cash is going to be able to help you get into a property, but you have some loose debt on the side, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's one size fit all, where that person should use that money to pay off the bills, because that money can catapult the customer into being able to purchase their first home, right? Which is going to mean more. The sooner you build equity, the sooner you build a tax shelter, you can focus on a debt on the side. So everyone's situation is a little bit different when it comes to advice on that. I go by a case-by-case basis, depending on their goals, in order to provide the proper advice on that part. Now, aside from credit, we know credit's pretty important to showcase that you're paying your bills and everything on time, you're showing financial responsibility. The other two parts of a lender evaluating a pre-approval and figuring out what that max purchase power is really going to depend on your income and also your assets. Now, your assets is basically what you currently have saved up, whether it's going to be for reserves or whether it's going to be for your down payment money that you need for the house you're going to buy, or your estimated closing costs and prepaids, right? So that's where your assets come in. And there's also other products and so forth that we're going to talk about that can actually help leverage and help with that too as well. Income is going to be a huge component, because depending on what that estimated mortgage payment is, along with your total bills, right? That's going to be your projected future housing. Because as we go through a pre-approval, we really don't have a house yet. We really don't have a mortgage yet. So we're just kind of playing pretend in the very beginning, having an idea and a rough ballpark, how much you're looking to buy, for us to determine approximately what that mortgage payment is, and just making sure that fits within your budget. There are certain guidelines that it comes with. Some are more flexible than others, which we can actually get into. But your initial first step when it comes to home buying, let's just say you were introduced to Lilly and Selam from someone that's worked with them before, and they're like, hey, I want to buy a home. What do I do next? So your first step is going to go through what you call a pre-qualification. So what a pre-qualification is it's a basic loan application. We're probably pulling credit, we're probably not. It's more like a make pretend to say, hey, does it sound like it looks like you're going to be able to qualify and get a pre-qualification letter? Now, in this day and age, in this market, pre-qualifications used to work a long time ago, but these days pre-qualifications, they don't really work anymore. In fact, if you want to see a home, most of the time a realtor is going to at least make sure that you have a pre-approval. Now, the difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval is on a pre-approval, you're fully documenting what you're going to need to get the process reviewed. So for example, I'm a customer looking to buy, I'm calling a loan officer, I'm saying, hey, I want to get pre-qualified. Could you pull my credit? I make ABC dollars. This is how much assets I have, right? But what the lender doesn't know is that, hey, even though I'm telling them I'm making this much, I could be self-employed and writing off half of my income as expenses. So in reality, they're not looking at a correct number when it goes through underwriting, when all the documents come in. So if you try to go off of a pre-qualification, the quality of work that's being done is pretty much slim to none, which is going to be very tough for you to have that as an effective pre-approval. Now, when you go through a pre-approval, what that basically means is, depending on your situation, we're collecting all the documents that are necessary up front for us to review exactly how to calculate and leverage the income. So this next slide here, it talks about a standard checklist of what typical loan applications would have to go through. It doesn't necessarily apply to all. So I just want to run this through really quick. So we got pay stubs for, most of the time you just need it for about 30 days. Tax returns are pretty common. If you're self-employed or if you own properties, but if you don't have any of that, most of the time we can get away with just, having your most recent 2 years of your W-2s. So when it comes to employment history, it's important to make sure that you know what that history is. Typically, what lenders are going to do is they'll go off of a most recent 2-year history of income. That's not every single case. I've had cases where people were self-employed and they've been self-employed for 5 years, but we might be able to get away with just 1 year of their most recent tax returns. And that just depends on the product that we're doing and depending on how the income overall looks as we analyze that. Bank statements or asset statements, just to show proof of where your funds are. Now, there are issues that can come up if you have large cash deposits and you cannot show proof where it comes from. So it's very important to make sure that the lender is aware when you have your assets, they're going to review where deposits and so forth are from. Anything that's payroll related, not a big deal. It's common sense you're getting that through work. But let's just say, for example, you got a $20,000 cash deposit that just came out of nowhere. These things are going to be questioned and they're going to ask, hey, where did these assets in particular come from? Now, usually when it becomes a problem is when we cannot show proof of where those funds are from. A lot of this is just to prevent money laundering. So I know some customs, like for me, I'm Asian custom, right? We're big into like saving cash. Sometimes we're putting it under our couch, under our pillow, whatever. So there's certain different instances where sometimes it's just because it's customary, but it's important to talk about these things up front. So this way the lender is aware and can help you out with that ahead of time. Now,
wait, can I just ask?
Sure.
What if it's like your parent or somebody in your family like helping you pay for that, then what happens? Like if it's
That
just a
could
gift from
be
a
okay.
family member. Okay.
Correct. So aside from just your regular assets as a home buyer that you're saving, there
Mhm.
are other ways where you can raise the funds. Just to name a few of those, one, I'm not sure a lot of people are aware of that, but you are allowed for the most part to borrow from your 401k. So a lot of 401k providers from your employer, they consider that as a major life-changing event when you're purchasing a home. So typically, most 401k providers will allow you to draw up to 50% of the money that's in your 401k, depending on how many years you've been at the company for, how long you've been invested for. The beautiful part about that is you're borrowing it from yourself. So as you're paying it back through payroll, you're actually paying yourself back in interest. But at the same time, that money is still in there being invested. So it's a great way for people who don't have their personal liquid cash. They can leverage that as a part of their funds to close. Another part is if you're, if you're lucky enough to have close family members that are very nice, that's willing to give you a gift fund to purchase a home, that's also allowed as well. On my end, one thing my team is really, really good at is we don't just take a look at loan applications on a surface level, because sometimes just by asking the right questions, it could literally make a big difference on whether or not we can get that client pre-approved for their dream home, or if it's a denial. So it's important to overturn all these different questions and look at all options, but that's a really good one. So I've been seeing that quite a bit sometimes too these days,
Thank
getting
you.
gift funds for home purchase, no problem. Copy of driver's license, photo ID, just to show proof of identity. You want to make sure nothing's expired, especially when it comes to closing. Sarah can definitely attest to that. No expired identifications at closing. Now, if you're self-employed, it's a little different. So for W-2 wage earners, for the most part, we're going off of the gross income, meaning before taxes, how much you're earning, because in your pay stubs, federal income tax is already coming out, state tax is already coming out, Social Security is already coming out. Now, when you're self-employed, you can write off in the end of the year whatever your expenses are. So, let's just say if I say, hey, I made $100,000 a year, but I have $99,000 in expenses, what you're doing is you're telling to the IRS, hey, I only made $1,000 that whole entire year. So when you're self-employed, a lot of the income documentation is going to derive to, your personal as well as your business tax returns for the most recent 2 years. And depending on how long a self-employed a business owner has been employed for, there could be some, leniency, maybe like having a 1-year tax return. And usually you would need a profit and loss, depending on a time frame. Sometimes, it has to be audited. Most of the time, it doesn't have to be audited, especially if it's a year that's not even supposed to be filed yet. So it's very important to manage those finances correctly. So for self-employed borrowers, it's most crucially important to prepare ahead of time, because if you're going to be affected by the most recent 2 years of your tax returns and there's any adjustments that you need to make to your business or expenses, it's best to try to get that figured out as early as possible. Last but not least, if you own any other properties, any properties that you own, whether you're a co-signer for them, whether it's a timeshare, that's also considered as property as well. We do need proof of what those expenditures are, because they're obligated monthly payments that you would have. So if you currently own properties, then we would need, certain things like the mortgage billing statement, the insurance declaration page, an HOA payment coupon or statement, because these are all expenses associated with the housing. And we have to count that in when it comes to calculating your debt ratios to see what it is that we can actually qualify for. Any questions on this part before I move to the next slides?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, perfect. Now, the next slide I'm going to go over, this is our, go beyond a pre-approval, ready, set, home program. So one thing I could tell you this based on personal experience, not all lenders are created equal. Being in the business for 20 years and helping thousands of families out there, I've seen really, really poor quality of work. And I've seen a lot of professionals that will do things the right way. Rest assured, we're not one of those places that want to do bad work. We want to be one of those places that are known to do extremely good work and be able to represent you and protect you clearly. So when you get into a home contract, It's very important that you know exactly how you're submitting your offers and how you're getting everything in. Lilly was mentioning it's pretty typical to do a 1% earnest money deposit on a property sales contract. And sometimes you may have to do more just to showcase to the seller that, hey, I'm a strong buyer here and you should pick me over this 9 other offers. So that money is at risk. If you miss any of your contingencies, if you generated the contract the right way the incorrect way because you didn't have a realtor represent you and you miss certain dates, the seller could be nasty enough and say, hey, I'm going to keep your earnest money deposit. You can hire an attorney to sue me if you want. More than likely, the buyer's going to lose because they breached the contract. So our goal is to make sure that we help you cross your T's, dot your I's. So we talked about a pre-qual earlier, which doesn't really hold any ground when it comes to shopping for homes. The pre-approval is more solidified, which is most general in the market. And that means you submitted some income documents in, the tax returns, your ID, your asset statements, and it's been reviewed at a loan officer level, right? So on our end, we run this through what you call this automated system. It's either called DU or LP, which is Fannie and Freddie Mac. For most programs, we're running it through that system through. And then we just go off of whether or not, hey, if it says if it's going to be approved or not. Now, depending on the level of detail, right? If the loan officer maybe miscalculated the income, or maybe they try to count income in that guidelines are just not going to allow when the underwriter is going to review the file. These are all different factors that can blow up the loan process. So I've seen customers in the past where they come in and they said, hey, Patrick, I was pre-approved by ABC lender or bank, and I got in a contract, but 2 weeks before closing, I got declined. Right. And these people have their hopes up. They're trying to move into a home. That causes a tremendous amount of heartburn. So one of the things that we do on our end, and we have the capacity to do, which most lenders don't, is our Ready, Set, Home program. This is a certified buyer program. Now, what happens is when you get into a purchase contract and you have a home that you're ready to buy, that's when lenders are actually having you go through that full entire underwriting process, where they're underwriting your income, your assets, and your credit. But guess what? If anything goes wrong and you don't end up getting the house and your financing gets declined, it's going to cause issues. When you purchase a home and you submit a contract in, one of the important factors is for the seller to feel really good about the offer that they're accepting. Because, for me, for example, if I'm selling a home, I really don't want anything to go wrong. I don't want anything to throw a monkey wrench into my plans to move into the next property. So with this Ready, Set, Hope program, what we're allowing our customers to do is we are allowing our customers that are serious home shoppers to go through that full underwriting process. So we treat it as if you have a contract to purchase a home today. Now, there's a few reasons why we do that, right? One is to give our customers security, knowing for a fact that we already fully underwritten your credit, your income, and your assets. We already know that's 80% of the process flow. So when an underwriter reviews everything and we've cleared the conditions and they've approved everything on that side, what we're able to do is come up with what you call a full-blown underwriting commitment letter, which holds very strong. That's letting the sellers know, hey, your financing is set. The only thing we have to worry about at this point is taking a look at what the property situation is. If there's an inspection, making sure that comes back okay. If there's an appraisal contingency, making sure that the value, everything now is going to be more house related. So that's one way of how it can help with security for the buyer. And also, typically what I do on my end, I know a lot of loan officers may not do this, but for me, I do this on 100% every single offer that I put in. So whenever we submit an offer with a realtor, let's just say we took care of this loan commitment, I pick up the phone and I reach out to the listing agent and I let them know, by the way, this is Lilly, my client I represent. I wanted to let you know the process flow that the customer has went through. And we also got a full-blown underwriting commitment, right? That makes the seller feel very good because if they know that, hey, it's underwriting approved, they know that the financing is going to be all set. So let's just say if you're in a situation.
Patrick,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. So going back to putting forward a winning offer, one of the things that as your real estate agent, we may advise you to do is possibly looking into waiving your financial contingency. So not a lot of lenders do what Patrick is talking about, where instead of just giving you a pre-qualification, you actually have a commitment letter. And that's one thing that we always ask our buyers if they're working with a lender we're not familiar with, are you able to obtain a commitment letter? Because if we're waiving a financial contingency, we're telling the seller that, hey, like I am pretty confident that no issues are going to come up when it comes to my financial underwriting process. So, but if certain things do come up and there are any surprises, you can lose your earnest money deposit. So this particular program is super important. And I know we have some folks that are in, California or different states outside of the DMV here. And Patrick, I think one thing that's important to keep in mind, his company serves in, I think, pretty much all states, I think, Patrick, if you want to confirm that. But it is very important that you have a commitment letter in a competitive market so that we can comfortably waive the financing contingency. Just wanted to add that because we do see.
And just to add to that, Selam, we're like dealing with a lot of cash offers when it comes down to the multiple offers. So having a commitment letter is very comparable to like a cash offer. So it's definitely, it puts you in a higher level getting an offer accepted than just a pre-cal. So I'm glad you mentioned this, Patrick.
Yep. Yeah, and it allows the buyer to compete as well, right? So instead of a cash offer, let's just say if they can close in a week and a half, if we're already pre-underwritten, there's been times when my realtor is reaching out to me to help with their client and say, Patrick, can you close it in 10 business days? No problem, because we already got the commitment in. And sometimes that speed can make a difference for a seller to pick you as well, because what if they're in a rush to get into their next place, if they have to move or relocate for business or whatever, we're bumping into all types of situations like that. So having the Ready Set Home program done ahead of time and having a commitment, that 100% definitely goes a long way. You got the speed and we're able to help you handle a very strong vetting call. I don't want to take up too much time, but I have a story that I would like to share with you all. This is a client that I actually have closing Monday. So they're moving from Canada. They used to live in the area and they're moving back, but they were very nervous without knowing what to expect, what type of neighborhoods they're in. So they were doing virtual showings and so forth, but they were also pretty shocked because the last time they purchased a home here was over a decade ago. And it was really easy for them to get in a contract because it was a buyer's market at the time. Of course, the market today is very, very, very different, right? And I was educating the client, letting them know, hey, these are the steps that I would recommend for you to take in order for you to stand out like a sore thumb to have your contract accepted. Because most of the time when sellers are looking at offers, the majority of them are going to be general pre-approvals. So what I did was we educate the client. We went over and explained to them, hey, what waiving a financing contingency means. Even though they needed financing to obtain the loan, I gave them confidence, letting them know that, hey, because we're fully pre-underwritten, our debt ratios are low, your income is good, you're on salary, you really don't have any risk on this side. So I gave them the green light. It's okay. I feel comfortable enough for you to do that. However, full disclosure, your EMD is at risk if anything goes wrong. But I would definitely make sure that everything looks good so that that doesn't happen. So in short, they found a house they really love that they saw. It was a flipped home, completely decked out, a house in Ashburn, Virginia, that was listed for about $700-something thousand. Within their open house on a Saturday, they had over 100 families visit this house in 4 hours. In the end, we were up against 30 offers that we had. So what we did was we make sure that we send an aggressive offer, and the realtor was able to research, take a look at, hey, what's a fair market value price to have this customer buy this home for? And how much do you think they're going to need to escalate? Just exactly what Lilly was talking about. How much are we going to have to escalate in order to win the property? So we planned on that first, submitted the offer. Next thing I did when the offer went in was I gave a really good, strong betting call to the seller's agent, which they actually really appreciated. And then towards the end, because of that, taking that extra step, having our clients go through the full underwrite, all that paid off. They actually won the offer. And they're closing this Monday, but we did have to move fast. They wanted us to close in 2 weeks, which is 10 business days. and we pulled it through. We were actually ahead of schedule by 3 business days on that. So without having the proper team help you to figure this out, it could be, it could be crucial whether or not you're going to be able to get into a contract or not. For example, I used to work for big box banks for a few years. And one of the reasons why I left is because they couldn't focus on maneuvering on closing too quick. So that's why I ended up just working for a national mortgage company, because we only focus on mortgages, nothing else, no car loans, no credit cards or anything like that. And we can get that process through, really, really quickly by doing so. So hopefully that story helps you guys out in understanding what we have to go through on our end to help people get successfully ratified. Any questions before I move to the next slide? Okay. Now let's talk about interest rates for a little bit. A lot of that has been on subject. We do offer a lock and shop program. So for those customers who are worried about, oh my gosh, I hope the rate doesn't change, we have the ability to lock in rates for 90 days up until a full year if we're looking to protect the market. A lot of times what we're going through is taking a look at what the industry is currently doing, what kind of predictions we're hearing so far to pinpoint what's going to happen with interest rates, and then base the advice off of that. Some of it depends on the timing of what the client's looking to do as well. But in case if you want to secure anything ahead of time as far as interest rates, that is something that we actually have the ability of doing. Now, right now, just to talk about rates a little bit, just so that everyone's aware, because I hear this conversation all the time with clients, and one of the biggest factors when I talk to some of my referrals are indicating, hey, Patrick, I may not want to buy it, I may want to wait because I want rates to drop lower before I buy and get into a home. So I completely get that as far as the initial concept goes, but what's important in our market is to make sure that we understand it and know exactly what's going on in the industry as well. So currently right now, every 1,700 families that are needing homes, there's really only about 1,200 available. So when interest rates dipped very, very low back in COVID days, it's because it caused a big global scare, right? People didn't know what to expect. People couldn't work. There were people that were just collecting checks. And at the same time, there was a lot of money that was spent during that time too. And whether it was manufacturing, car chips being behind, there were so many things that have caused a delay, and also builders were afraid to build. So then interest rates hit record lows, like 100-year record lows. My grandmother is going to be 100 years old in November. And she was like, Patrick, I've never seen this rates this low in my entire life. So first thing, don't expect interest rates to jump back down to 2 and 3%. We're probably never going to see that again in our lifetime. So don't base your decision off of that. Base your decision more of your needs. Everyone needs a house to live in. If it's the right timing for you, do it because you need a home and you want a place to live in. Don't do it because of what interest rates are, because as Lilly and Selam was indicating, if rates ever do drop to those levels, we have the ability to refinance the mortgage loan. So when you purchase a home and you tie it to a mortgage, that particular mortgage down the road, eventually, you are allowed to take advantage of refinancing it to different terms if that opportunity arises. So one of the things that we do as a lender, we keep in touch with all of our clients, is we keep track of what the market's doing, and we help our clients manage the mortgage over the years. And so if we see something that benefits a customer to refinance, we'll definitely reach out and let them know, and whatever goals they may actually have. Now, currently rates lately have either been in the upper 6s or lower 7s. And because so many people were used to seeing those very low interest rates for a few years, they're thinking that's the normal instead of where things are now. But in fact, if you look at a history of 70, 80 years of interest rates for mortgages, but you pull away COVID days and you pull away the last mortgage crisis we had, interest rates right now are actually at historically pretty low ranges. If anyone here has parents, like my parents had a mortgage back in the 80s, it'll scare you. Their interest rate was like 13, 14% for a mortgage back in the 80s. If you just Google search it really quick, look on the history of interest rates, you're going to be able to see that. So the fact that rates are at upper 6 and lower 7s, it's actually not that bad. Now, the other thing you got to realize though is this: there's a lot of buyers right now, like Lily was mentioning earlier, because rates have went up. They're kind of sitting on a sideline now, right? They're hoping, hey, maybe rates will drop to 5.5%, and then I'll go and buy the house. That's a huge mistake, especially right now, because we're projected to be low in inventory for the next 3 to 5 years. Right now, there's just simply not enough homes for people, which is going to make it, tougher for renters because rates are more expensive now. So as investors buy homes, you're going to rent the homes out for a higher price. Now, it could potentially be for the next decade. So anyone that is able to get into a property within its time frame, you're going to end up doing pretty well if you hold it long term, because it's less competitive when more buyers are on a sideline that are waiting for the rates to drop. Because guess what's going to happen once rates, if they do drop to 5.5%, you're going to have a gigantic pool of buyers come in, and we're still low in inventory, and that's just, yeah, that's going to cause a bidding war. That means people are going to pay so much more money for homes. So if you have a capability of doing it now, you're better off owning that property first, and then when the opportunity comes up, to restructure it. There are some other strategies that we have that can help people bring interest rates down as well. For example, interest rate buy downs. That's something that customers are allowed to do. And what that basically means is, instead of you taking the raw rate of what you qualify for in the market, you could do what you call discount points to discount the rate, which in turn can help you lower your payment. So I'll give you a quick example of that with one of my clients that purchased. They were a veteran. They didn't know if it was better to do 5% down or 10% down. So one of the things that we do when it comes to budgeting is we go off of the customer's goals of what they're looking to do. Their biggest concern for their family was really monthly payment obligation. So when we got in a contract, the question was, hey, Patrick, should I put an additional 5% down? My memory is right. I think it was about a $600,000 purchase price, veteran client. And when I did the math, I looked at it. It made more sense to do a discount buy down. So if they were to do 5% down more, the monthly payment was going to change by like $160 something per month lower by that extra 30 grand in cash. But instead, we took a look at the customer doing points. So they did a pretty steep discount buy down. They did about 3 points, which is 3% of the loan amount. However, it was able to take their rate from like 6.75 down to like 5.25. So the monthly savings by the customer doing that, it ended up saving them a drastic amount of money, like $600-700 per month. My memory is right on that. So instead of them spending 30 grand, right, to save 168, they spent half of that money and saved 600 something bucks a month, and they could pocket the rest of the cash. So these are important things for us to discuss and know about, depending on what your goals are and how we would leverage providing that particular type of advice. I'm going to take a quick pause there for a second before we talk about some mortgage products.
Yeah.
Any questions on the board?
Yeah, there are a couple questions. What's the best way to do this? It's okay. So in this competitive market, do you use escalation clauses often? If so, how successful have you been for your clients? I think Lilly and Selam, you guys talked about this a little bit earlier, and I think you guys were saying that that is a strategy that you guys use. So anything else you would add to that?
I think when the interest rates did go up, obviously we do have a lot of buyers that were suddenly priced out. Mm-hmm. But one thing you want to consider is that real estate is a very market specific industry. Mm-hmm. The DMV is very strong. There are a lot of capable buyers. There are, we have some of the wealthiest communities that are competing aggressively, and most of them are, cash buyers out of, doing these competitions. So yes, in order to compete with these other buyers, we are using still escalation clause. Now, I mean, the number of buyers there aren't that many on the market, but the ones that are having to, just compete as aggressively as buyers were just even 2 years ago.
Okay. We have a lot of questions, and I know that we're supposed to end at 3. So I'm going to allow us to keep going. And then once we just kind of get through all of it, I know we're going to be talking about the first time home buyer program in a few. So Some people had questions about that. There was a question about, is the full interest amount paid tax deductible? And I think that would be a question for Sarah when it's her turn. So we can just keep going for now, if that's okay.
Sure, no problem. All right, so the next things we're going to talk about is going to be, general type home mortgage loans. I don't want to bore anyone, but literally on our end, there's subcategories of certain loan products. We actually have over 200 loan products on our side. Not that you really need to dig into all of them. For the most part, majority of loan programs that people are going to be financing through for home ownership, it's really going to boil down to like a handful type of products, unless there's special needs or special types of bond products that we're doing as well. So just to run that through really quick, we have our conventional standard loan program. They offer in fixed and adjustable rate options. ARMs today are in pretty low demand, unfortunately, just because knowing that rates can potentially change, not a lot of investors are purchasing those. So generally, the majority of the loans that we're doing lately, are your fixed rate loans. Conventional is going to look for your, general good qualifying credit, decent down payment. There are minimum down payment programs as well. You can get away being a first-time home buyer with as little as doing 3% down, which is massive. A lot of countries outside of us require huge, gigantic down payments, or you're only buying a house if you're buying it in cash. US is one of the places where you can put minimum skin in the game and start building equity for yourself. FHA is what you call a Federal Housing Administration loan, another very common loan product. There was a question earlier asking about FHA and 203K. So FHA also pairs up with other programs that we have as well that can offer low down payment options. You can get away with as little as 3.5% down. Closing costs are very reasonable with the product as well, and is less strict on credit requirements. So let's just say, for example, we got a customer where the credit scores drop because of the balances that they owe towards their credit debt, and that's causing a problem, to qualify for conventional, or it's making the terms worse for conventional. FHA would be a good solution for that. And a lot of times we can increase the debt to income ratio as well for FHA loans versus the conventional side, which is more like your standard type mortgage loan. Next, FHA 203K, the main difference is let's just say you want to purchase a home using FHA financing. The 203K option allows you to do renovations to a purchase. There's two different versions of that, and it depends on the dollar amount of renovations that you actually need. But if you do find a property where it does need renovation work before being able to close, FHA 203K will be one of those options that you can actually do. Conventional also offers an option too that allows renovation as well during purchase, and that is called Fannie Mae Home Style, and we have that product as well. VA, very, very common program. We got a lot of veterans in our area here. This is specifically geared towards veterans that have a VA eligibility to purchase a loan, to purchase a home, and the interest rates are really reasonable. One of the biggest benefits for VA is you can do 100% financing on the sales price. Now, you got to be a veteran and have the eligibility in order to do so. And there's also no mortgage insurance as well. So you can get away with, very, very little with VA. So we have any veterans on this call that's looking to purchase, definitely worth looking into. USDA, United States Department of Agriculture loans, these are more designed for more rural areas. So if you're in the middle of a city, more than likely you're not going to be able to use a USDA loan program. And it's another product that can allow you to do up to 100% financing. There's bond products that are associated with it as well. We are actually the 5th largest lender in the US for USDA that's recognized. Construction loans. Sometimes if you can't find a home that's perfect, that suits your needs, we do offer construction or permanent loans when you're going out looking for a piece of land to purchase with, and then you're hiring a contractor or a builder that's going to build that house specifically to your liking. So we do offer those in general. Typically, it's going to cost more skin in the game because there's a lot more risk as a lender that we go through when we front the money up for the construction project. And that can usually go anywhere between 6 months to a year, depending on how big the project actually is. Home style, we did touch on this. This is the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac conventional version of renovation home purchase. And home style, you can add more luxury amenities, versus FHA is just to make sure to get the house up to par with the 203K program. The home style one, you can do things like maybe do a pool, a jacuzzi, those type of things, as long as the house appraises in the end. So those are just some general products that I just wanted to go over really quick. Now, no matter where you're starting, if you have a goal of home purchasing, it's always good to, just investigate what type of products that are out there. These are some additional home product, first-time home buyer products that I just want to touch on, and they're for different areas. So you got the Maryland Mortgage Program, which can help with closing costs, right? Or prepaids. Their program is up to $5,000. It is a repayable loan back, but during the initial stages, there's no payments for it. And then later on down the road, if you were to sell the house within a certain period of time, there's rules and regulations for that. Virginia Housing, VHDA, that's a very popular one too. And a lot of times we could pair these programs, whether we're going conventional or FHA or USDA, we can piece those together. And the Virginia Housing Department has certain programs where it can either help go towards your down payment, or it can help go towards your closing costs and prepaids, or even a combination of both. They also offer grant products and so forth as well. For DC, we have DC HVAP and DC Open Doors, which is a very popular program. And then we also have NACA that serves nationwide. And I'm not too familiar with NACA. I do know there are specific lenders that are tied under that particular program. I've never done one before in my career side, but I've heard, through rumors, I think it's kind of like a lottery system. If someone is more familiar with the program, feel free to shed some light, but I am familiar with all of the others. Now, keep in mind, when it comes to bond products or grant programs, just because you're a first-time home buyer, it doesn't mean that you're automatically eligible. So majority of these are going to require for you to be, one, a first-time home buyer, meaning that you have not owned any home, or you have not even co-signed and been on a deed of ownership for at least the minimum the past 3 years, right, before the actual date of getting in a contract. A lot of these products are also income restricted as well, which means there's going to be caps of the program, meaning that you cannot make too much money, or you may not be able to have too many assets to leverage these programs, because it's really geared towards helping families that really need them. And then some of the programs are only geared towards very low or low to moderate income, according to the county's median household average, is what that would go through. No
And Patrick,
problem.
I have one question for you. For those who already own property, what are the restrictions on buying multiple properties with a conventional or FHA loan as owner occupied to take advantage of lower down payments? Can this be done without causing any issues with lenders? If so, what's the best strategy, and how often and how many times can this be done?
Great question. So in fact, I encourage a lot of people to build wealth through homeownership. I have friends right now that own over 10 properties, some own over 15 properties, and they've been doing this over the course of 20, 25 years, and it's created such a wealth tool for them. Literally, they can retire today if they wanted to and sell the equity. So generally speaking, there are certain loan products that are only able to be used when you're purchasing a primary home. VA, for example, is one of those. FHA is another one that's one of those. USDA is another one that's one of those as well. So when it comes to primary residence, it just means you're spending the most amount of time there. But with underwriter goes through things, it has to make sense, right? If you work in Bethesda, Maryland, and you're buying a house in Bethesda, Maryland, and you have to work physically there, that makes sense. That's a primary home. But if you're saying, hey, I want to buy a primary home in Bethesda, but my job that requires me to work there is over in California, there's just no physical way you're going to be able to go back and forth every day. So the property description is very important. There's different terms on different types of property descriptions. Primary homes, you're going to fall into the best categories on pricing and also the lowest amount of down payment. Now, the general requirement is if let's just say you're doing a first time home buyer product, you're doing 3% down on a conventional loan. Typically, you got to be in there for a year, 12 months of mortgage payments. There are exceptions if you're buying another primary home within that time frame, but it has to make sense, right? So for example, let's just say all of a sudden I purchased the home, didn't expect this, got married all of a sudden, and they have a child, right? That comes with it. That's a change circumstance. This house no longer fits me. I'm living in a condo. I need to upgrade and get a bigger house. But if I'm buying the same exact house size, that's not going to make sense. So when underwriters take a look at that, all that comes into consideration. But anytime after 12 months and you purchase the home, let's just say Selam, for example, she bought a house, that's a condo, lived in there for a year, and now decided, hey, I want a little bit more space. I want to upgrade. I want to get a townhouse. The next home that they purchase, it's completely okay as long as you saved up enough minimum down payment. Now you're not going to be working with the first time products anymore, but there are other products out there where you can get away with as little as 3.5% down, or you can get away with 5% down and needing general closing costs and prepaids, and you can continue to build real estate that way, and then rent the prior house out or sell it. So for me, and I'm friends outside of this with Lilly and Selam, and I'm sure we had this conversation before. I wish that when I was like 19, 20, 21 years old, someone would have drilled in my brain that you have to buy a house as soon as you can, as early as possible, because there's so much generational wealth that's out there. Just to use my own personal family for an example, when my parents came to the States, I mean, they were just working labor jobs. They didn't even have a couple dollars to rub together. They worked very hard to save all their money and purchase their very first home and got the dream of home ownership. They bought a 4-unit property at the time. They rented out 3 other units, and eventually that home mortgage was paid off. And that's what catapulted them to sell the home, earn that big chunk of change, and that allowed them to start their family business at that particular time. So there's so many beneficial ways to build generational wealth. We're very familiar with that end. Now for us, other lenders may be different. Most lenders are going to cap you at 4 loans with them. So if you were to finance properties, you can only have 4 loans with that one lender. We don't have those additional rules and regulations. We can finance up to 10 properties for an individual on real estate. So for those,
can you speak on if the properties they're looking to purchase, what would it matter whether they're owner occupied or not? I'm sorry, if they, as an investment,
it does make a difference. If you're buying an investment property, that straight up means that you're buying it house to rent it out, and you're not looking to live in that particular residence. So it boils down to subcategories. So you got primary residence. The next category is going to be like a vacation home. Let's just say I want to buy a house in Florida just to go vacation there every once in a while. That would be considered as a vacation home. There's different down payments that are associated with that. It's usually much more steeper. And then you can also purchase investment homes as well, where the minimum down payment then changes drastically. Your minimum down payment now could be at a minimum of 15%, and sometimes up to as much as 25 or 30%, depending on what kind of terms the investor actually wants. So we're all very seasoned here in regards to, whether you want to buy your very first home, or whether you're looking to downgrade, you're looking to sell, or retirement, or even investors. We're pretty equipped with all facets of that to make sure we educate the consumer on exactly what to do, what's best going to help them out.
And Patrick, one more question from Maron. Patrick, can you share more information about mortgage programs that enable you to purchase a home while also paying off student loans, particularly for first-time home buyers? For example, the Maryland Smart Buy program.
So yes, all programs do allow you to purchase a home, even though you have student loans. The difference is really the obligation in which program we're going to tie it to, and basically count that particular debt or exclude that debt depending on the guidelines of that particular plan. So just because you have student loans, it doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot get pre-approved for a mortgage. We work with people with student loans all the time and find ways in specific programs that can help them in general to get purchased. And the rest of it really depends on their income, credit, assets, the whole 9 yards as well.
Thank you.
No problemo. Now, this next slide that I'm showing you, it's an example of what renting versus owning looks like. I've been using this software in particular for over a decade, and it's very versatile. We can use it in different ways. So right after I pre-approve a customer, the important goal for me is making sure that I help them make an educated decision on what's going to work out financially for them. So a lot of times we're going through different budgets, right? So if I have a client that's thinking, hey, I don't know if I'm going to buy at 450,000 or 800,000, that's fine. That could be the window, but let's take a look at what that entails, right? So we can go over different price points, comparing it to what their current rental analysis is. And then this way we can properly budget accordingly. So you know how much cash or close you're going to need for the particular program, how much your monthly payments are per month so that you can budget accordingly as well. One of the craziest things I hear is, just not having the right data and right detail. So there was a financial advisor that I knew out of DC that went through their internal lending service, but the loan officer completely forgot to tell them about the transfer taxes, for this condo that they were buying that was very expensive. In short, a day before closing, they were told you need $15,000 more in order to settle. Thank God he had that. If he didn't, that could have completely blew up the transaction. So that clarity and transparency up front is going to be very important. So anyone we come across where we work up, a full-blown financial outlook scenario, will help budget accordingly. This report in general is to go over the different approximations between renting versus owning. So the way that I scaled this is on a $600,000 sales price with 5% down. I mean, typically for a home that's valued at this, by the time you add in, renter's insurance, paying for a parking fee, and the rental payment, you're probably going to end up paying about $4,000 a month for a place like that to live in. So this is the rent column here, and I base this off of a 24% federal income tax bracket, assuming that it's a married couple that files jointly on standard deductions, which is like 27,400 from what we saw. So we specifically tailor this to the client. So if you take a look at renting, let's just say your rent dollars by the time it's all said and done is $4,000 a month. Naturally, whether you own a house or not, based on your tax bracket of 24%, your tax benefit average on a monthly is about $554 per month. Okay, even if you don't own a home. However, when you're renting a place, the landlord is the one that's getting all of that benefit, right? So if you look at over here, where it says principal paid, there is no principal paid because this isn't your home that you're actually paying. So when you take a look at the true net costs of how much it runs you to rent a place and have a roof over your head in this scenario, you got the full face dollar here that a renter is paying, and then you subtract your average monthly tax benefit. This becomes your true net costs, $3,446 a month, right? After subtracting the benefits. Let's take a look at the same exact couple purchasing a home for $600,000 and 5% down. So down payment itself, you're looking at $30,000, which is 5% off the $600K, which leaves you financing $570,000, just assuming a 6.875% interest rate. APR is never the interest rate that you're paying on a loan that you're borrowing. That's just including some settlement charge fees that the government always requires for all lenders and anyone that offers credit to disclose, which is always going to be higher than what your actual rate is. So $360 for months for a 30-year standard mortgage. Now, if you take a look at the total payment here, you got $4,455. So even though this naturally is a little bit more than the renting scenario, right? You got to factor in the benefits and take a look at the overall big picture. So right underneath that, this is the average tax shelter. We talked about having the big benefit of being able to write off your mortgage interests, being able to write off things like property taxes. I'm not a CPA, but I believe MI is able to be written off too as well for mortgage insurance, depending on what your income bracket is. So when you take a look at the average tax benefit on this, instead of $554 for renting, this now boosts this particular couple to $835.26 per month average on the first year. Now, keep in mind that adjusts as the years go by, and so does the principal. The least amount of principal that you're paying into a mortgage is the very beginning of the mortgage loan, literally the first half of it. And then after the first half of the mortgage, the majority is actually going towards principal. So you got this benefit that's coming to the buyer. The next one is going to be your average principal paid per month on an average for the first year itself. So that right there is already close to 500 bucks, which is about 6,000 a year in principal that you can actually gain. So when you take a look at someone owning a home for 600,000 versus renting, you got the full face value payment here, the 4454, minus your average tax benefit per month, minus the average principal that you're paying per month for the first year itself. And here comes your true net cost, 3,140 bucks approximately, which is actually under the amount to rent. So this scenario in general, net dollars, you're looking at about 305. And these are some things that you may not feel. Like Sarah was talking about, perfect example for her. She paid $5,000 in taxes without owning her condo first. But after the year of purchasing her condo, instead of paying $5,000, she actually got $8,000 back, which is huge because that's a $13,000 swing between negative and positive, right? Now, this particular scenario, cash or close, you're looking at 44, 45,000. So when it comes to budgeting, it's important to understand what consistent monthly payment that's going to be comfortable for every family. The last thing we ever want to do is cause any discomfort. You know, I don't want someone to survive off of eating ramen noodles just in order to pay their mortgage every single month, right? Affordably. So in a nutshell, this is, a difference between renting versus owning. I thought that was pretty interesting to kind of showcase. And any questions on this part for anyone before I move to the next slide?
No, this is a really helpful graphic though. Thank you, Patrick.
No problemo. In fact, I didn't want to put too many scenarios in here just to confuse anyone, but we do this on an individual level as we prepare our clients to budget accordingly. So this way you know exactly where to pinpoint your price point and where you're shopping. Now, the other thing is too, we talked about escalations earlier. So let's just say if we got a family pre-approved up to 800,000, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should start shopping at home prices for 800K. We should still take a look at what the difference in payments are, because when lenders are taking into consideration of calculating what you can get pre-approved for, we're mainly only going off of what's on your credit report for monthly obligations, like car loans, credit card minimum payments, maybe student loans, maybe another house or mortgage that you own. But the things that we don't look at and we don't have to count in are all the other miscellaneous things. Let's just say daycare, right?
Yeah.
How expensive is that these days?
Yeah,
Cell phone bill, Netflix, Prime Video. I'm sure a lot of us have like so many of these different sources, right? So these are things that you always want to budget accordingly and take a look at.
Yeah.
And that's a part of what we do. Now, this next slide is pretty cool. This is something that we've actually created. We call it Mortgageopoly. If you want to take a screenshot of this, I think we should be able to share the slides right afterwards.
Yeah, we will be sharing the
Okay.
slides with everybody who's joined today and who signed up for the workshop. So go ahead. Sorry.
Awesome. So this basically gives you kind of like a Mortgageopoly chart of how the process flow actually works. And it's also really good reminder on the do's and don'ts of home ownership. So if you take a look at the do's, save your pay stubs, keep your bank statements, continue to pay all your bills on time. Before you apply for pre-approval, the last thing you want is to show late payments. Keep copies of everything you submit. Call us for any questions, or if you're in doubt of what you should or shouldn't do. The don'ts: don't make any large purchases, don't even co-sign for someone. Okay, if someone needs co-signing, that's going to count against you, and that can affect your buying power. Don't apply for new credit cards or loans. Most of the time when you're doing that in the very beginning, it could detrimentally affect your credit score and can take some time to rebound. And don't change jobs and don't make large cash deposits. Your job's going to be very important. It's what we're counting on to get pre-approved, what your income is at the time. So let's just say you get into a contract, you're getting ready to buy a house, and all of a sudden, hey, I'm going to quit this job and go look for another one. That's not going to work. That's going to get you declined. So it's very important to make sure, whomever you work with, as far as your lending institution, that they clearly understand and know exactly what's going on with your situation whenever in doubt. But this is a really good chart to let you know what the process flow is. Just a quick recap of that. You got pre-qual, finding a home, making an offer, contract, insurance, application, appraisal. There's definitely a lot in this. So sometimes it could be a little bit overwhelming when you don't have a good team that's handling you. You know, the way that we operate on our side, we like to handhold all parties. We update each party every week exactly what's going on, including the seller side, just to make the process flow very smooth. So literally the goal is to hold your hand throughout the whole process and walk you through each and every step of the way. So you're never alone in this. Because when you don't have that proper service, you may want to pull your hair out. But if you do got the proper support, such as a great real estate team and a title company, because there's so many different parties that are in a purchase transaction, the better your squad is, the better experience you're going to go through and the more success you're going to have. I think this might be it. Okay, next one here is the My UHM app. This is something that we have internally. Anyone that would like to have a copy of this, feel free to shoot me a note and I can get this out to you next week through either via text or email. It's a pretty cool tool. It allows you to calculate ballpark monthly mortgage payments just to have a rough idea. If you know what the current market interest rates are, you could save particular scenarios. Let's just say if you went home shopping and you want to save a particular scenario for an address, you could save these different scenarios, and it makes it very streamlined and easy for customers to apply. You can actually use the app to upload documents, apply for a loan application, and both my contact information along with the realtor contact information will both be on there as well, which we can all get that set up this coming week with this particular group themselves. So anyone that wants access to that, feel free to reach out. There's also a lot of useful, frequently asked questions and answers that are on there. And we're always there to be a resource for you in the event there's any questions as you go through the planning down the road as well. So next part we're going to talk about is going to be what the title company does during a transaction process as well, which we have our expert, Ms. Sarah Anderson. She's going to handle that part next. So
Thank
Sarah,
you.
take it away.
Thanks. And
Okay.
Patrick, before Sarah starts really quick, can you just put your email and contact information in the chat for everybody so that they can reach out to you directly if they have any additional questions? That would be great. Go ahead, Sarah.
Sure.
I'm so sorry.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like 3 minutes. So I know we've gone a bit over all such good information. We appreciate Patrick. He is like the end all be all of loans, and Lilly and Selam, love you too. I've known Lilly since I started in real estate and I moved out here in 2016. I've been a real estate attorney since 2011, 2010. It's been a while. So anyway, I really appreciate working with this team. And again, one of the things that really strikes me with Lilly and Selam, like just knowing the whole DMV and really knowing if you think you wanted in Northern Virginia and then all of a sudden like Maryland's looking great, they know those programs, all of them do. And so it's good to have good partners. I'd say I do closings for, gosh, I don't know. I used to do like 12 closings a day, right, Lilly, back in the day?
Probably more.
And yeah, and Lily's team, they would come in and their clients took advantage of all the programs because Lilly and Selam knew how to navigate those with their lender. They were getting money back out of their EMDs, things I've never seen before. So I feel like Lily's teams really taught me a lot because I don't see all realtors taking advantage of those programs and really explaining it, open doors, all of that. So props to Lilly and Selam for really doing that. I think we had to deal with the firefighter in DC and he took advantage of a program in DC, got an extra loan out of it. Like, I don't even know if there's an interest rate.
He was able to get the property using HPAP program, and yeah, I believe he paid $500.
Yeah, so coming, and this is something I didn't know was even a thing. When I moved here, I had $90,000 in student loan debts. I had $25,000 owed in credit cards. I had nothing. I didn't even have a job. And now I went from within 3 years paying off all my debt. I have literally no debt. Paying off all my student loans, buying 2 homes, owning everything outright, except for my homes, I have mortgages. But like I have equity built up. This is something that I didn't think was possible for me. When I started doing closings, I was looking at how much some people would have to bring to the table, thinking like this, how am I going to do this? But turned it around, talked to a lender, got a plan in place, had my little dream board with my goals for the future, and I made it happen. And really, with the help of a great team such as Lilly, Selam, Patrick. So if I mean, we could all do it. It seems, I know, sometimes unachievable and difficult, but Lilly, Selam, Patrick, they know all their programs. It's worth looking into, make sure your credit's good. And I just can't speak to that enough. So quickly, really quickly, what do I do? Who knows? Because you don't see me till the closing table. However, I do a lot in the background.
I hate to cut you off, but quickly, we may have individuals who feel like they're not ready when it comes down to credit, income, and so forth. And that's okay, because Patrick can sit down with you and tell you what you have to do to, build your credit back up, or be able to, he'll give you a sense of, if you pay this credit card by 5%, your credit will go up by this much.
Yeah.
So don't feel as though my credit is not there yet, I can't do it, because it's possible.
And speaking to my own experience working with the lender, I realized I have a 401k. I might have some debts I have to pay off, but I have a 401k I could borrow against. And then I was able to pay off my debts. I actually borrowed against my 401k to purchase my first house. It came out of, it was all worked into my paychecks. They would just pay it off on the side. And these are all great tools. So if you have a 401k, if you have some funds saved up, great things to look into. So speaking from personal experience, I didn't have a ton of money going into this, but I was able to utilize those resources.
Yeah. And just to add to what Lilly and Sarah mentioned, what Sarah was talking about with the specialty, with the programs out there, there are a ton of programs that are super specialized. I know someone, I think earlier in the comments, asked about using employment history from a different country. And there are programs out there for foreign status. And so we can probably talk. I'm sure it's in the comments somewhere, but hopefully we can connect one-on-one. But there are also, if you're a medical student, or you are just starting your career as a doctor, and you have a ton of loans out there, there are specialized programs such as those. So, and then to add to what Lilly was saying, almost every home buyer I encounter, they were never ready, because they assume that it's not going to work out for them. They're not going to be capable of achieving certain goals when it comes to owning a property. So I always say to them, unless you go to a doctor and really get a lab test, that how are you really going to know where you really stand? So connecting with a lender and a professional who can actually look into what your situation is and kind of give you a blueprint. Even if you're not ready today, you might be ready in 2 years or 3 years, but at least you know exactly what you need to work on and where you stand at the time. So just wanted to throw that in.
On a lender's perspective too, I apologize. It's important to prepare as advanced as possible. It's key, because if you do need to do some things and you have a goal of really wanting to buy, the best thing to do is get prepared as early as possible. I remember one client in the past where they tried 3 times with other lenders, and she was either not getting the proper advice or just flat out saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, I can't help you," and left. She actually came over to us. We prepared her. We're extremely good at thinking outside the box and making sure that we provide the proper advice. In short, it took us 30 days to prep her. 60 days later, she was able to buy. She got their family into a home. So, don't let that go. You got team members here that actually care about people. They want to help. So definitely leverage those resources.
Okay, so what is the title company? What do we do? So our jurisdiction, we run Maryland, DC, Virginia. We do all of those jurisdictions. Basically, we represent the contract. So we do not represent the buyer or the seller or the lender. We represent the transaction as a whole to make sure it's done correctly per law and per that contract. So we also, 3 main roles. We act as the escrow agent. So your EMD, after you're pre-qualified, you have a ratified contract, you're gonna need to send money somewhere, you send that to the title company. And then we have non-interest bearing accounts. We hold that money, we make sure it's safe and that everything is followed through with the terms of the contract on our end, as far as the release of that money, how to apply it, etc. When you go through the whole process, we also, what you guys do not see, we work with the lender very closely to put our numbers together to get the final cash to close number and to work on underwriting requirements, which I'll talk about in a moment because that's the second role we do. But so we work with the lender in the background. You won't see this. We do things you don't know about because you only know about it if there's really an issue. We work with the lender, we get that final cash to close. When you get your final cash to close from the lender, it will come via a closing disclosure about 3 days before settlement. That money, you do not send it to the lender, you send it to the title company because again, we're those escrow agents. So we collect that final cash to close, you receive credit for your initial deposit as well. And that's what we do. Then after settlement, we go ahead and disperse all the funds to the seller, to all the payoff lenders, to all of that. So you don't need to worry about it. We hold the money. That's what we do. The other thing we do is we underwrite the title insurance. What's title insurance? Why do we care? Well, kind of important. Your home's going to be your number one likely investment that you've made to date in your life. You're purchasing a home. You want to make sure it's insured and you don't lose it, right? So title insurance, what we do in title on the nerdy legal side, we do a 60-year look back on title. So we pull property records all the way back 60 years on the property. We then compare all of the deeds to make sure the proper party signed. We look at any judgments against the seller, any liens that are recorded against the property, any unreleased mortgages, HOA payoffs. We handle all of that. So we look at what needs to be paid off. We request those final payoffs. We make sure the numbers add up. We work with the lender in the background to make sure that's done. Now, us looking back 60 years on title, clearing any sort of existing mortgages and judgments, that gets us to the title insurance phase. Now, what's title insurance? Seems very boring, but it's very important. So the lender requires a lender's policy that protects the lender only. There's an additional owner's title insurance. Now you have no claim under the lender's policy. That's just to the loan amount for certain circumstances. So you'll want your owner's title insurance if you want to protect your investment in this purchase. It's a one-time fee you pay at settlement. It's based on the sales price. You never pay it again, and it protects you forever. So if there is an improperly probated estate in the past on the property, if there was a trust with the wrong trustee signing, which we wouldn't know, if there's improperly recorded mortgage or interest against the property that wasn't cleared because we didn't know because it wasn't recorded, you'd be protected. Anything comes up, title claim to ownership, a lien against the property wrongfully, or something that wasn't accounted for in the past, you are forever protected. This is your assurance so you sleep well at night that your number one investment forever is protected. The title insurance includes attorney's fees and costs. It would make you whole if anything came up on property. Title. My dad's used it. He sold his property and then he was named in a lawsuit to clear past title issue related to his ownership in the chain of title. He filed a claim against the title insurance. I was like, Dad, please tell me you got title insurance. And he was like, yes, I did. So he filed a claim. It covered attorney's fees, costs. He didn't have to deal with the lawsuit related to like a prior adjustment issue on the lot lines. It was all taken care of. So obviously we do what we can to minimize the risk, but there is some risk you're assuming if you do not get the owner's title insurance. And that's what it is. People ask about that when they see it as a line item on the settlement statement. So I just want to be upfront about what it is and what it does and why it's separate from the lender's policy. The last thing we do, aside from requesting all the payoffs and the mortgages on the HOA, on, really communicating with those parties. I am one of the people you will see at the settlement table. So I'm the boring person at the settlement table that hands you all the documents to sign and tells you what you're signing. So basically you'll come into settlement. If you have a loan, you'll have about 100 pages for signing. I will make it fun and interesting. And then I'll tell you, literally we'll go through all the numbers together at the settlement table. By that time, we'd have the funds in our account, which you'd wire to us, which will be in the next slide. We will also go ahead and I'll just tell you, I'm like, this is a standard federal disclosure that says Equal Credit Opportunity Act, so and again, having the team there at the settlement table will be there to answer questions. Most people don't read everything since it's a standardized format of documents you're signing, but I will point out everything particular to you and your loan and your purchase and what the legal ramification is of the document, just an overview. So know that you have a whole team in your side and overseeing the contract to make sure everything's legal at settlement. We aren't just going to send you into a room to sign a bunch of documents you don't know what they are. So we'll be there for you. And that's kind of one of the most important things. And then we get to turn over the keys to you. We get to tell you congratulations. And then if things do come up, you have a team behind you to assist with resolutions. So we are a well-seasoned team. We have seen everything. I have so many stories, I won't even get started. We've seen everything, and then we're able to resolve it and problem solve and work together. So I think it's really important to have that great team. As far as one thing I do want to mention, wire fraud. So that's a thing. Just be cautious. We do have, and all title companies, I believe, do have a system in place to reduce wire fraud. Just know that when you have your initial EMD, you can send it. We have a bank shot app, which is basically an electronic deposit of your check into our account, or call us. Worst case scenario, number one thing, just call a known number. Call Lilly. Lilly has my cell phone. She knows how to reach me through my verified number. If you have any questions or issues, just make sure, Google Pruitt Title if we're your title, company, and you want to make sure we received your wire, or if you received the wire instructions and want to confirm. Google, you'll receive, hopefully you won't, but there have been instances where accounts are hacked, you're sent new wire instructions that are changed. Don't call the number on that email because it'll be the fraudulent number knocking off wire instructions. Just know the number one thing, always call to verify before wiring that in fact the information you have is correct, and call a known number. Okay, so we will clear the title if title is not marketable or insurable, meaning that it has title issues, it has judgments exceeding, for instance, the amount the seller is to receive, and they can't bring cash to the table. That would get you out of the contract because the seller agrees to deliver insurable title. So if they can't insure it, then you get your EMD back, right? So also, if you have questions, we do go through and clear the title issues. We let you know if there are any concerns that might potentially cause a delay, which would be at the seller's expense. That's all things those are things that the team will work through and talk to you about. The great thing about knowing this team of amazing people is that we have good communication. So if something's up, I will text Lilly, I'll be like, something weird came up on title, look into this, sending it to you now. We'll jump on a call, we'll fix any potential issues or come up with a list of solutions and then have a call with you. So that's the great thing, being on top of things. And so the rest of it, it's just some examples on this slide as to things we come across with estate matters, especially with Maryland estates. If there's an estate owner, we go through, we look at all of the past records, the land records, the estate records, the trust records to make sure the right person's signing so that we can ensure the title for you. So if someone comes back and says they had a right to ownership and they were left out of the probate, then you are protected under the title insurance. A few things I wanted to mention, I'll be quick because I know we are over. As far as generational wealth building, if you have a property, for instance, I own this condo, but I'm not going to live here forever, I will probably rent it out in the future. If I rent it out for several years and it becomes an investment property, and then I decide to sell it, right? There's something called a 1031 exchange. which is great to know about. And we could talk about, email me if you have any questions on that. But basically, capital gains tax, and again, not giving you tax advice, I'm an attorney, not an accountant. But if you do go to sell a property and you have not lived at it for 2 of the last 5 years, or have used it as an investment property, you're basically going to have to pay a capital gains tax on any sort of gain on the property. If you've lived at that property for 2 of the last 5 years, if you haven't used it as an investment, you go to sell it, then there's usually $250,000 per person, or $500,000 if you're married, of the gain that you don't have to pay taxes on. Talk to your tax preparer about it. I'm just giving you a quick overview. So there are ways which you have deductions for capital gains tax when you sell the property, but another way, if it's an investment property, you can roll it over into what's called a 1031 exchange and purchase another investment property with it. That basically defers those taxes. So it is really great for building generational wealth. It's a great tool. We have a team of 1031 exchange agents who can walk you through that process. And just know that if you're looking to sell an investment property, it's worth talking to a 1031 agent to see if it's worth, if you are rolling it into a purchase of a similar property, right? A similar investment property, like kind of exchange, then there is a method to kind of defer those taxes and continue from benefiting from that.
Sarah, I'm just going to ask a quick question. You answered the capital gains question. Thank you for that. But somebody asked, like, how do I lower my home yearly tax? What is the criteria?
I would love that for everyone, but we also want our properties to appreciate in value, right? So properties are assessed by the tax assessor's office on a regular basis. If your property tax value goes up in the tax records, great. It's a good thing, right? But you have to pay more property taxes. And also there is a taxable rate, right? The rate can also change year to year. Few things I want to point out. There are certain programs in Maryland and DC that kind of cap the increase of the property tax rate, especially in Maryland. If you lived at your property for a certain period of time at settlement, we will complete a form with you that we'll submit to Maryland that basically makes it so there's a cap. As long as you're living at that property as your residence, there's a cap on how much they can increase the tax rate. Now, we can't say that the value of the property will not increase. You kind of want that to happen. You don't want, the value of the property to stay low, because that could affect things when you go to sell. But insofar as the taxable rate, there are ways to cap that in Maryland, which we cover at settlement. We fill out a form, send it into Maryland on your behalf. And also in DC, there's a homestead exemption. So if you live at the property in DC, you still have to pay property taxes, but you have a slight discount on the rate. So those are some ways in DC and Maryland to control the property taxes and the increases. Now, if you receive, so every year you receive a tax statement in the mail letting you know what the assessed value is. If you believe it is skyrocketed and it's not accurate, there is a way for you to contest that. You do have to go to a hearing. It's a whole process, but you could contest if you feel like it was inadequately increased, just doesn't make sense. There is a way to question that increase. But again, property tax values, they're increasing, generally a good thing for you as the homeowner, right? So yes, property taxes tend to go up, but that's not always a bad thing. That's going to help you when you go to sell. So
yeah, thank you.
Okay, and then and quickly, I also wanted to talk about property taxes and then settlements, then I'll be done. So not property taxes, sorry, the reduced recordation transfer taxes in DC. So if you're a first-time DC home buyer and you're purchasing a property, I don't know, Lily, is it like under 640,000 or something around there?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So if you're purchasing a property under a certain amount and you make I believe they keep changing it year to year, So it's a reasonable amount. It's like 150,000 or something. If you make less than that, then you could qualify for what's called a reduced recordation tax in DC. So if you're a first-time DC home buyer, you're purchasing the property to occupy it, you make, and I think the threshold's really high. It's like 150,000 or something. If you make less than that and the property is under a certain value, then you actually could save a lot of money on the recordation transfer taxes. So we're looking at like 50% decrease in your recordation transfer taxes. So in DC, your buyer seller pay 50-50. Well, now you're paying 25% if you qualify for that. So that's something that's part of the contract when you do a DC contract, and Lilly and Selam will walk through that with you. But there's also a website linked in the standard contract that tells you what those qualifications are. If you have questions on that, you can also reach out to me. Happy to help walk you through that. But that's something we do in the background. We'll draft up the form to qualify for that reduced recordation. We'll get the taxes from Patrick's team to qualify. So your income taxes, all of that, to prove that you're under that threshold. And that's going to save you a significant amount of money. The other thing in Maryland, they have first-time Maryland home buyer, and these are specific to you buying your first home in Maryland or DC. So if you already own a home in DC, but you're purchasing for the first time in Maryland, you can still qualify for that first-time Maryland home buyer credit. And that's going to, again, save you on the state transfer taxes. So those are all great programs, just be aware of. In Virginia, transfer taxes a little bit lower. So we don't have those first time reductions in the recordation transfer taxes. Just know that. And is there anything else I'm missing? Settlement. Okay, so the last slide here, we're talking about, I hear this so many times. Do I have to be at settlement? Yes, you have to be at settlement. So if you're buying a home, please do not take a vacation to Jamaica or wherever you might want to go. Please be there at settlement. So buyers have to be there present to sign on the day of settlement at settlement with our lovely team. Now, keep in mind, things happen if you are in the military, especially, or you have someone you have to be out of the country to take care of or whatever. We know things happen, life happens. So if you have any indication that that might be a thing for you, let us know, please, so we can set up a power of attorney and have someone who you trust and know, such as a family relative or the other buyer, so we can have them sign with power of attorney on your behalf. And you'll need to execute that power of attorney with the U.S. notary. So just let us know if that's a thing. That's the number one thing. Just make sure you communicate with the team if you are not going to be available to sign, so that we can kind of talk about some of those options. There are so many options for that. We just want to kind of give you a heads up that if you aren't available, let us know so we can help you to plan for success on your settlement day. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right, thanks, Sarah. So to talk about the next steps is really about closing. So for us on our end, is a lender gets the official clear to close, right? Those are the three words that we always want to hear. Realtors love that too as well. To prepare, what you got to do is you got to make sure you have your photo IDs, right? Title company is going to verify, or your closing attorney is going to verify that you are who you are, so that you're legit. Now, before closing, what we'll do is we'll have final numbers to go through. By that time, a lot of it's really a formality, because as a lender, you're getting all these initial loan estimates throughout the whole entire process, which are what you call normal, typical required closing documents. Well, estimations, and then it becomes a final closing document. So your true final numbers are going to be balanced between our post-closing department along with the title company. So once all these numbers are together, we'll review it one last time, make sure everyone is clear on, hey, how much funds to close we need to bring, verify items for accuracy. And once all that's done and you conduct closing and sign all the documents and it's notarized accordingly, you'll be all set. So the copies, what you would receive typically at closing is going to be the list on the right-hand side, which you receive at closing. And they also do the electronic versions of that too as well. Now, following closing, it's important to make sure that you understand when your first mortgage payment is going to be. So we actually are a big servicing company. So we service a majority of the loans that we actually do. And we have different ways of how you can pay it, including the phone app as well. So whether you want to do, paperless or old-fashioned mail, that all works. But initially, you're generally going to have some initial payment coupons once you close, because it takes us about a month and a half to get servicing actually set up, get it into the system before you are able to make official payments online. And expect to arrive in the mail. You're going to have your homeowner's insurance policy paperwork, so you understand how that works to cover you. Your recorded warranty deed, your title, and then Sarah, if there's anything that really comes out from your end after closing.
One question I always receive at settlement is like, people grow alarmed. Oh, they're transferring my mortgage. Someone else is servicing the payments. Just know that it does not change anything about your loan. Your interest rate, the amount you owe, your monthly payment, all of that stays the same. The only thing that changes is who you make your monthly payments to and who holds the escrow funds for the property taxes and homeowners insurance. So know that it's fine. This is a standard practice. It happens all the time for almost every loan. So if they do transfer the servicing, for instance, mine was transferred to JP Morgan, another one was transferred to a Regions Bank, nothing changed about my loan. Is simply who I make those payments to. And then always know that you could reach out to your loan officer, Patrick, to confirm who is servicing that loan. So you'll receive several notifications in the mail after settlement. Your mortgage, it's public record. So people take advantage of that, unfortunately, and send you spam mail. You might receive fake notices, requests for money for your deed. Just know that you can reach out to Patrick, myself, Lily's team will be able to confirm if you have any concerns, but you should, when they do transfer the loan, receive clear notification from both the party selling, so the mortgage and the new servicer. They should clearly match up. Call Patrick, call the loan officer to confirm before you set up payments. Just with the concerns with all the fake mail going on, just know that we have your back. We're familiar with these notifications, and do not be alarmed by the increase in mail.
I'm glad you point that out because it is very common. We are one of the rare ones where we service a majority of our loans, so I don't experience it as frequently on my side, but typically every servicer, they have the ability to sell the servicing. As Sarah said, all the terms stay the same. Generally speaking, you're going to get a farewell letter from your existing servicer, and you're going to get a welcome letter from your new one. But of course, whenever in doubt, you can always pick up the phone and reach out to servicing or loan officer, and we can confirm it that way. And this actually concludes our meeting. I know that we're way over. Apologize for that. Conversations went flowing, and we did include the final page with everyone's contact information. And of course, would love to answer any kind of final questions and give your Saturday back.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Lilly, Patrick, Sarah, Selam. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to put all this information together. The fact that we went over is probably an indication that it was necessary, and there was a lot of valuable information that came out of it, and people had a lot of great questions. So thank you guys for taking the time to pull this presentation together and get us those answers. I really appreciate it. I think everybody who joined, this was really useful. I learned a lot. And if they have shared their contact information, we will be following up with everybody and sharing the PowerPoint slide with everyone. So everybody who signed up for the workshop gets this. We will be uploading this on YouTube as well. And so people can access it there. If you do have any other questions, feel free to ask. We are very grateful to both Selam and Lilly. We have a scholarship fund, and they are both sponsors of our scholarship fund, and we really appreciate you guys for that too. So just on that as well, if you would like to donate to the Ed and Scholarship Fund, you can do that here. But we are really grateful for you guys, and we appreciate you guys taking the time to do this on your Saturday. Thank you everyone for joining us and sticking through with us, even though we're a little bit over time. So I really
And
appreciate
thank you
it.
so much for giving us the platform. You guys are amazing. You're doing great. You have all these incredible programs that you're running, and we appreciate you. We really value you. And thank you so much to everyone who attended. I know it's not easy to spare you a Saturday afternoon with, and to be out there doing something fun, but hopefully it was valuable. And we hope to hear from y'all. And thank you so much, everyone at EDN. We really appreciate you.
Yep. Thank you guys. And I'm going to stop the recording now.
Thanks.